Book 21, The Peak, Chapter 25, Revisiting the Divine Light Plane. Linley took 2 deep breaths in a row. His chest rose and fell like the bellows of a furnace, and afterwards, he regained his calm. Since Augusta made a promise to the chief sovereign of fate, Orloff, he will definitely act with full force. No wonder he has always protected his 12-winged angels so well, and rarely allows them to go out on missions. Linley's gaze was clear. My mother should be a 12-winged angel. 600 or so years from now, if I don't interfere, she will definitely be sent to the planar wars. Linley frowned slightly, then murmured, 600 years. With regards to Augusta, Linley definitely wanted to kill him, whether for the sake of Beirut or for the 4 Divine Beasts clan. Originally, Linley had been planning to wait until his power increased before he would go and kill Augusta. Not only would he fulfill the wishes of Beirut and the 4 Divine Beasts clan, he would also be able to save his mother. Several birds with one stone. But now, I have to give something up. One option. Give up my mother, focus on training, and after I succeed, kill Augusta. The second option. Find a fire-type lesser sovereign that I don't know, kill him, and fuse with his sovereign spark. After my power increases, go kill Augusta. The third option. Resist and endure for now, and lower my head. Go negotiate with Augusta. Linley almost instantly came to his decision. Giving up his mother? Impossible. Murder a fire-type sovereign for no reason? Linley wasn't capable of this either. In addition, if he did, he would be violating the pact which the chief sovereigns of the edicts had set up. Fine, then. Linley took a deep breath, his gaze steely and resolved. For now, I'll resist and endure. Linley. Right at this moment, 2 figures walked over from the gardens. It was Beirut and Blue Fire. Previously, although Linley had not been able to kill Augusta, the power that he had revealed was still slightly greater than Augusta's. If the 2 had fought to the death, Augusta's chance of death was higher. Thus, Augusta no longer dared to offend Linley. Naturally, Beirut and Blue Fire were now able to casually wander about in the infernal realm with their sovereign clones. After having spent so many years hiding in the Yulon plain, they were naturally pleased at having their freedom again. Linley, just now, the blood-rich sovereign came. Was there something important? Beirut chuckled while stroking his beard. As they were both sovereigns as well, the 2 of them had naturally noticed the arrival of the blood-rich sovereign. Only, the blood-rich sovereign, Boson, clearly wanted to meet with Linley privately, and so the 2 of them hadn't shown themselves earlier. They waited for the blood-rich sovereign to depart before emerging. It is regarding the planar wars, and regarding me taking on emissaries. 600 years from now, a planar war will begin, and the battling sides will be the infernal realm and the celestial realm. This particular planar war is extremely important. Linley said, then repeated the information he had heard in detail. Beirut and Blue Fire listened carefully. Afterwards, they sighed in amazement. So Augusta has been so incredibly fortunate. No wonder even the chief sovereign of fate owes him a favor. Beirut said with a sigh. The 12-winged angel army can indeed play a deciding role in a planar war. Blue Fire breathed in surprise. If they all charge forward together, it is all but guaranteed that they will achieve victory in a planar war. The reward for winning 10 consecutive rounds is breathtaking as well. No wonder the chief sovereign of fate would go ask Augusta for help. In the previous planar war which Linley had experienced, the combatants were the divine light plane and the divine darkness plane. Victory or defeat in that battle didn't matter much. Naturally, there had been very few sovereigns controlling matters from behind. Linley, what did you just say? The army of 12-winged angels is going to the planar war? Doesn't that mean, Beirut suddenly realized what this portended? Your mother, she. Right. Linley gave Beirut a helpless glance. Tell me, Do I have any other choices? Beirut pondered for a moment. 600 years. Linley had spent 5,000 years to reach his current level. To make another large breakthrough in 600 years? Even Beirut himself didn't feel much confidence in Linley. Then Beirut looked towards Linley. I've decided that tomorrow, I will go to the divine light plane. Linley said calmly as he stared into the distant skies. His gaze seemed to penetrate the walls of reality, seeing the divine light plane from afar. Beirut was silent for a moment, then nodded. Sometimes, to accomplish great things, one has to be able to submit and endure. As I see it, to Augusta, you are a paragon who no longer has any untapped potential. I imagine that in his heart, he doesn't feel too much fear towards you. If you negotiate with him, the chances of success will be quite high. In the future, you can get rid of him later. Beirut was a person who was capable of killing ruthlessly, but also able to endure and hide. When he discovered the corpses of the 4 divine beasts, although he knew that seizing them would be extremely dangerous, he also understood that after succeeding, he would go from being a deity to a sovereign. In addition, Beirut acted in accordance with the situation. First of all, the chief sovereign wasn't paying him, a high god, any mind. Second, he was in a material plane and had the natural protection of a material plane from sovereign intrusion. Third, he was a god-ader rat who didn't fear chaotic space. He had enough power and enough confidence. He dared to take risks, but also knew how to pull back. All of those things combined to result in the current Beirut. Otherwise, how could the Yulan branch produce 3 sovereigns? I hope things will turn out as you said, Grandpa Beirut. Linley nodded. The vast, divine light plane. A ray of light was streaking over from the teleportation array, instantly moving 10 million kilometers away. The wind slashed past like a knife. Below him was the boundless water of the seas. A blue-robed Linley advanced through the air at high speed, staring ahead with a somber, icy calm gaze. Linley frowned slightly. I didn't expect that the chief sovereign of fate, Orloff, was here as well. After arriving in the divine light plane, Linley had sent his fused divine sense to instantly cover the entire plane, allowing him to maintain a watch over the activities of the entire plane. Naturally, Linley was able to detect the location of the chief sovereign of light, Augusta, but unexpectedly, Augusta was alongside Orloff. Him being here, is a good thing. Linley mused. Linley didn't come here for battle, but for negotiation. With Orloff present, Augusta wouldn't dare to speak too wildly. Moments later, Linley's divine sense changed from being generated by fused sovereign power to Earth-type sovereign power, much like how an ordinary Earth-type sovereign would use it. This change to using Earth-type sovereign power for powering his divine sense was naturally detected by the 2 chief sovereigns. Haha, Linley, why have you come to my place? Augusta sent with a laugh, seemingly having forgotten the previous battle with Linley. Naturally, I have something important to discuss. Linley smiled slightly. I didn't expect Lord Orloff to be here as well. What a coincidence. Haha, I'm here to discuss some things with Augusta. The chief sovereign of fate's gentle voice echoed in Linley's mind as well. Not long ago, I invited you, Linley, to come visit me in my Orloff gardens, but unfortunately, despite waiting for so long, I never managed to see you. A person could disguise his basic nature for hundreds or thousands of years, but it was impossible for a person to disguise his character forever. The chief sovereign of fate, Orloff, didn't get involved in worldly affairs. He treated everyone he considered to be a friend in a very good manner. Linley felt much admiration for the chief sovereign of fate, Orloff. But of course, Linley couldn't possibly be like the chief sovereign of fate, never getting married, never relaxing, never enjoying himself, and instead spending all of his time in various forms of research and training. Lord Orloff, in the endless years to come, you and I will have plenty of time to meet each other. For example, aren't we meeting today? Linley laughed comfortably. Haha, right. We will have endless years to come. Orloff laughed as well. While chatting through divine sense, Linley had already flown past countless islands. He was like an arrow, streaking down from the skies. The island directly below Linley was the residence of the chief sovereign of light. This was an extremely lavishly built island. The island had a circumference of a few thousand kilometers, and its main structures were made of a white material. Naturally, it had all sorts of rare, unique magical beasts, flowers, and vegetation that had been collected here. The magical beasts had their own regions, while the flowers had their own regions as well. They all had their own private areas. In the air above this island, there were a large number of deity-level angels. Aside from the angels, all the other deities in this island were female. The only males present were Augusta and Orloff. Augusta really does know how to enjoy himself. Aside from his loyal angels, everyone else here is female. Linley couldn't help but shake his head and laugh. And then, he stared into the distance, as from deep inside the island, two figures were flying towards him, shoulder to shoulder. These two figures were followed by a large number of female servants. It was really quite an impressive display. Haha, Linley. Augusta called out from far away, as though they were old friends of many years. Augusta. Linley smiled as he greeted him as well. The white-robed, white-haired elder, the chief sovereign of fate, laughed calmly. Let's go inside and sit down. Augusta, I don't want to criticize you, but we're inside your island. And yet you put on such a grand show when welcoming guests. The chief sovereign of fate glanced sideways. The female servants behind them were divided into two rows, with one row of maids dressed in violet and the other dressed in pink. All of them were exceptional in terms of appearance. Haha, I will naturally listen to any suggestions that you have, Your Excellency. Augusta laughed, then turned and waved his hand, saying calmly, You can all retire. Those female servants all uniformly bowed with respect. Yes. And then, they flew away in an orderly fashion. Let's go to the water garden to chat. Augusta laughed while guiding the way. The person who designed this island and its buildings was definitely at the Grand Master level. Linley walked forward while viewing the island. He couldn't help but let out a sigh of praise. Augusta laughed delightedly. Haha, Linley, I don't want to brag, but this island of a few thousand kilometers circumference has 30,162 different types of flowers alone, all of varying sizes, colors, etc. The angels make the arrangements for them. From every single viewing location, they will seem very natural and give one a comfortable feeling. There are also various types of magical beasts. For the sake of building this island, I invited over 1,000 exceptional Grand Master level experts from across countless planes, each of whom specialized in various skills, so as to create a unified, cohesive whole. Hearing this, Linley couldn't help but shake his head internally. The rumors were indeed true. Augusta pursued perfection in all of his leisurely enjoyments. The water garden was a garden erected above a pool of water that had a circumference of a few thousand meters. The waters of the pool rippled with the wind, gleaming like precious sapphires. The entire garden was constructed from wooden materials, and the courtyards and pavilions all floated above the surface of the pool, and within the courtyard, small streams and rivers of water flowed about. This water garden doesn't use any magical formations at all. It is completely built from the extremely light fragrant hydrox wood, which generates enough floating power as to make the entire garden hover above the pool. Augusta pointed towards one direction. Look. That wooden bridge. Augusta smugly pointed out one crafted item after another. Linley listened while enjoying the sights as well. All right, let's all sit down. The chief sovereign of fate, Orloff, frowned slightly and spoke out. Right, right. Augusta sensed that he had been showing off just a bit too much, making Orloff rather unhappy. The three sat down within an open-air veranda, which was surrounded by the azure waters of the pool. The chief sovereign of fate laughed as he glanced at Linley. "Linley, I imagine you came today on important business. Speak freely." "That is indeed the case." Linley laughed while nodding towards the chief sovereign of fate, and then looked at Augusta. "Augusta, today I have come to ask your help with something. Whatever it is, speak freely." Augusta laughed as well. Linley said solemnly, "I hope you can release a 12-winged angel and let her regain her free will." 12-winged angel. Augusta couldn't help but glance at the nearby Orloff. The chief sovereign of fate frowned, but then let out a calm laugh. "Just one." "Right. Just one." Linley nodded. "One won't make much of a difference." Orloff laughed calmly. Linley couldn't help but then look at Augusta, who frowned and said, "Linley, this is a bit troublesome." Book 21, The Peak, Chapter 26, An Extremely High Price. Troublesome. Hearing this, Linley couldn't help but frown. Still, he didn't say anything, instead just looking at Augusta, waiting to hear him speak. "Linley, I will tell you the truth. Even if one of the chief sovereigns came and asked me to release a 12-winged angel, it would be difficult." Augusta said solemnly. "You should know that I have loaned my 12-winged angel army to Lord Orloff before, but that was just a loan. The 12-winged angels still belong to me." Linley nodded slightly. He had heard from the chief sovereign of death that Augusta probably wouldn't be willing to release a 12-winged angel, even if the chief sovereign of death herself asked. From this, one could imagine how difficult it would be for a 12-winged angel to regain freedom. "It isn't that I don't want to help you, only," Augusta laughed, then shook his head. "Apologies." Linley frowned slightly. "Augusta, it is just a single 12-winged angel." Linley said heavily. "If you have any difficulties, just tell me." Augusta shook his head and laughed. "This involves some secrets that I don't wish to make public. I can tell you this, though, the price of releasing a 12-winged angel is so high that, ever since the creation of the universe and ever since I became the chief sovereign of light, I have never released a single 12-winged angel. From this, you should be able to imagine how complicated the secrets involved in this are. Is there nothing at all that can be done?" Linley was rather frantic. "There is. Only, it is too difficult, and the price is too great. I don't wish to do this." Augusta shook his head and laughed. Linley was no longer able to stay calm. He understood that Augusta was perhaps telling the truth. "Augusta." The nearby chief sovereign of fate laughed calmly. "I can tell that for Linley to come here in person means that he cares deeply about that 12-winged angel. Otherwise, he wouldn't have come personally. Come up with a way to help out Linley a bit. If the price is high, let Linley compensate you." "Right. I am willing to compensate you for your loss." Linley gritted his teeth. There was nothing else he could say. Perhaps Linley would be badly taken advantage of, but Linley had no other choices. Kill Augusta? He wasn't powerful enough, and the chief sovereign of fate, Orloff, was right there. Ha ha. Compensate. Augusta sipped some wine, then snickered. "Linley, you have no idea how high the price is for me to release a 12-winged angel. Let me put it to you like this. The price for restoring free will to a 12-winged angel is so high that to me, it would hurt as much as having the majority of my sons and daughters being killed." Linley felt shock in his heart. Parents cared deeply about their sons and daughters. Although Augusta had many children, for him to say that the price was equivalent to losing the majority of this, one could imagine how terrifying the price was. "Augusta." The nearby chief sovereign of fate, Orloff, frowned. "Any loss and any price, no matter how great, has a limit. You should try and help Linley if you can." Tell him what you need, and I imagine he will compensate you. Orloff spoke out on Linley's behalf as well. Linley could tell. Ever since the chief sovereign of destruction had executed that space-time paradox technique, the chief sovereign of fate's attitude towards Linley had markedly improved. This time, he was speaking out on Linley's behalf as well. Speak. What do you need me to agree to, in order for you to be willing to do it? Linley looked towards Augusta. Lord Orloff's words are correct. No matter how high a price is, there is a limit. But this limit is beyond my ability to bear. If, Linley, you are willing to offer me your Overgod artifact, I am willing to accept. Augusta snickered. But, Linley, are you willing to give it to me? Overgod artifact. Linley was startled. All sovereigns knew exactly how precious an Overgod artifact was. Overgod artifact, mother, Linley murmured silently to himself. Be practical. The Overgod of fate, Orloff, frowned. Augusta, the value of all of your angels combined is still less than an Overgod artifact. You go too far by suggesting it. Suggest something that is reasonable. Augusta laughed calmly. I can't think of anything that Linley might have that is enough to make up for my loss. Linley felt frantic. Augusta. Linley was just about to say something. Augusta suddenly looked towards Linley. Linley, I suddenly thought of something. If you accept, then we can discuss this. Speak. Linley let out a secret sigh of relief. The nearby chief sovereign of fate, Orloff, couldn't help but laugh and nod as he saw this. I know about the relationship between you and Beirut. Augusta snorted coldly. That Beirut. In the past, he seized my. Just go straight to the point. Linley said. Linley was worried that Augusta wanted him to kill Grandpa Beirut. Augusta gave him a glance, then snickered. I can tell that the two of you are close. Don't worry, I'm not asking you to go kill Beirut. My request is, to give me 100 drops of blood essence from each of the 4 divine beasts. If you do so, then I would be willing to release a 12-winged angel, despite what it would cost me. 100 drops each. Linley couldn't help but cry out in shock. Augusta, do you know how many blood essence drops the 4 divine beasts had in total? Augusta, seeing this, just laughed to himself. He had intentionally set a high target, so that they could bargain. Even if you killed me and Beirut, you wouldn't be able to procure that much blood essence. Linley shook his head. In the past, the chief sovereign of destruction took away more than half of the blood essence of the 4 divine beasts from Beirut, so as to go and experiment. Only the remaining portion is in Beirut's hands, and he used up a large amount of it in his own experiments as well. The remaining amount of blood essence is very small. Augusta, hearing this, frowned. He knew that the chief sovereign of destruction had acquired a large amount of blood essence, and he even knew a bit about Beirut's experiments. If the amount is too small, I simply cannot accept. Augusta snorted. Augusta, to tell you the truth, of the blood essences of the 4 divine beasts, I myself have already used up some of the blood essence of the Azure Dragon to strengthen my own body. I have the least amount of the Azure Dragon's blood essence. As for the other 3 types of blood essence, I'm able to procure a bit more. Linley said. Grandpa Beirut and I can give you, at most, 11 drops of the blood essence of the Azure Dragon. As for the other 3 blood essences, I will try to come up with a way to acquire 20 or 30 drops, but I can't be certain as to the exact number. This is because I need to ask Beirut. Linley naturally wouldn't report a precise figure. Beirut had originally given Linley 81 drops of each blood essence. Linley now had less than 40 drops of the Azure Dragon's blood essence, but as for the other 3, he had more than 70. 11 drops of the Azure Dragon's blood essence. Augusta looked closely at Linley, then nodded slightly. Fine. 11 drops of the azure dragon's blood essence, and 30 of each of the other 3 divine beasts. I can't accept anything lower. If you give it to me, I will release that 12-winged angel you are looking for. Linley let out a sigh of relief. Finally, success. 30 each. Augusta, because I don't have the blood essence on me, I need to go ask Beirut. I cannot guarantee 100% the exact amount, but the difference shouldn't be that great. Even if there is a difference, I will think of a way to compensate you for it. Fine. Bring over the blood essence of the 4 divine beasts. Augusta said. Haha, the nearby chief sovereign of fate, Orloff, couldn't help but laugh. Augusta, isn't cooperation excellent? However, Augusta, why do you want the blood essence of the 4 divine beasts? Why don't you give it to me, and I'll hand over some supreme techniques that I've developed to you? Linley couldn't help but look at Augusta. Because the chief sovereign of destruction had lost the battle between himself and the chief sovereign of fate, he had told the chief sovereign of fate the secrets of his technique, space-time paradox. If the chief sovereign of fate then acquired the blood essences of the 4 divine beasts, he would truly become invincible. Lord Orloff. I deeply admire Lord Wadred, and also want to try my hand at research. Augusta said with a laugh. At this same moment in time, in the Indigo prefecture of the blood-rich continent of the Infernal Realm, within the Skirite Mountains, Hogg was together with Wharton. Swoosh. Linley's form suddenly appeared. Big brother. Wharton couldn't help but feel delighted, and the nearby Hogg looked at Linley, startled. With a laugh, he said, Linley, what is it? Linley had 3 sovereign clones. On this trip to the Divine Light Plane, Linley had left his water-type sovereign clone and his wind-type sovereign clone in the Infernal Realm. Actually, Linley was different from the other sovereigns, as he was a soul mutate, making it so that each of his sovereign clones had access to fused sovereign power. In addition, the soul of each sovereign clone was comparable in terms of will. It could be said that Linley, by himself, was comparable to 3 chief sovereign level experts. Only, he had just a single life Overgod sword, and so whichever sovereign clone which wielded the sword was the strongest one. This was why Linley didn't use all 3 of his sovereign clones to jointly attack the chief sovereign of light. After all, if he did so, most likely, the chief sovereign of light would deliver a sword blow to each and easily kill the sovereign clones that didn't hold the Overgod weapon. Father, make a trip with me. Let's go locate Mother. Linley said. What did you say? Hogg suddenly rose to his feet, his eyes filled with shock. Big brother, did you say, Mother? Wharton was stunned as well. Linley. Hogg gripped Linley's shoulders with his hands, both of which were shaking. His eyes were red as he stared at Linley. You found your mother. Hogg's love for his wife was so deep that it had sunken into his very soul. In the past, it was for the sake of searching for his wife that he had eventually lost his life. Yes, father. Linley could feel his father's excitement, and he couldn't help but nod. Good. Hogg was in a completely chaotic mental state, but then he came to his senses and said hurriedly, Quick, take me there. Let's go. Wharton, you stay here. I'll bring Mother and Father back today. Linley said, and then his wind-type sovereign clone led his father, Hogg, away from the Skirite Mountains. With Linley's sovereign clone leading the way, the 2 naturally traveled very quickly. Augusta was currently seated in the middle of the water garden, within that luxurious island. 10,000 years ago. A soul originally from the Yulon Plain. Augusta, hearing Linley's words, nodded. Don't worry. Sometimes, 1,000,000 years will pass without a single 12-winged angel being born. I imagine there has only been 1 or 2 in the past 10,000 years. And it was offered from the Yulon Plain? We will find her easily. As he spoke, Augusta stretched out his divine sense. Oh, you are bringing someone as well. Augusta laughed as he looked at Linley. He saw that Linley's sovereign clone was bringing Hog towards them. "That is my father." Linley laughed and acknowledged it. "The 12 winged angels are located in the nearby islands. They will arrive shortly," Augusta said calmly. "My subordinates have completed their investigations. Indeed, on January 1st, year 9987 of your Yulon calendar, there was a female soul that was offered to me. The soul was extremely pure, and after the angelic resurrection pool's transformation, it became a 12-winged angel." Linley's heart trembled. "That's her. That's Mother," Linley called out in his heart. Linley was born on year 9982 of the Yulon calendar, while his younger brother, Wharton, was born on year 9986 of the Yulon calendar. His father, Hog, had taken Linley's pregnant mother, Lena, to the city of Fenley, where medical services were superior. She had given birth there, and then gone to pray for blessings at the Radiant Temple. Afterwards, that next night in the hotel, his mother had been seized and taken. The Radiant Temple just so happened to be offering souls during the Yulon festival anyhow. "In a short while, you can give me the blood essence of the 4 divine beasts. Only then will I let that 12-winged angel regain her freedom and leave with you," Augusta said, then suddenly raised his head. "All right. That 12-winged angel has already come." Linley's eyes began to grow heated as he raised his head to look. White robes fluttering. Brown hair, same as Linley's. A beautiful woman descended from the heavens, with 6 pairs of pristine, pure white wings outstretched. "Mother." Linley held his breath. Book 21, The Peak, Chapter 27, Memories. Linley looked over carefully. This beautiful, brown-haired angel, in terms of appearance, did seem rather similar to him. "Is this Mother?" Linley felt a surge of agitation in his heart. "Master." But the first reaction of this 12-winged angel, after descending, was to kneel down. With but a thought, Linley immediately sent out a surge of sovereign power to press against the brown-haired angel, preventing her from kneeling. Linley couldn't help but feel a hint of vexation in his heart, and he looked sideways at Augusta, musing to himself, Augusta must have known that the angel would kneel upon seeing him, but he didn't say anything about it at all. For an ordinary angel to kneel was one thing, but the woman in front of him was very possibly Linley's mother. Linley wouldn't permit that scene to occur. Next to him, the chief sovereign of light, Augusta, let out a laugh. "Ha ha, all right, you can stand over there for now." "Yes." The 12-winged angel was very obedient. She stood to one side, not saying a single word. Only, every so often, she would turn to look towards Linley with curiosity. "Is she my mother?" Linley couldn't help but give her a few glances as well. When his mother had died, Linley had only been 4 or 5 years old. He didn't have any memories of her at all. However, as Linley looked at this beautiful, pale-skinned woman, he had a certain feeling, as though his soul was shaken slightly. "I'll still have to rely on Father to make the true determination. Father and Mother went through life and death together, he will definitely be able to make a clear determination," Linley mused. In the skies of the divine light realm, Linley's wind-type sovereign body was hastening this way, bringing his father, Hog, with him. "Father, Augusta has already brought out the angel that seems to be Mother," Linley said suddenly. "Already?" A tinge of an excited red blush was on Hog's face. "However, I can't be completely certain yet." Linley looked at his father. "Shortly, Father, you will have the chance to take a close look and see if it is Mother or not. I will definitely be able to tell at one glance." Hog was completely certain. At this point in time, a luxurious, dazzling island appeared within Linley and Hog's fields of vision. With green light flashing about them, Linley and Hog entered the island. Within the water garden, Swoosh. Two figures descended from the skies. It was the green-haired Linley and Hogg. The green-haired Linley walked towards Linley's original body, and then the two merged into one. Upon landing, Hogg seemed to be able to see only a single person, that brown-haired angel, standing off to the side by herself. Hogg's mouth opened, but he didn't say anything. His eyes instantly turned red. Lena. Hogg finally called out in a trembling voice. The 12-winged angel turned her gaze towards Hogg, looking at him with curiosity. Ever so slightly, she frowned. Lena, you don't recognize me. Hogg immediately charged forward, grabbing the 12-winged angel's hands. The angel didn't dare to act without permission, and so with a flash, she hurriedly dodged to one side. Father, don't be impatient. Linley hurriedly shouted. What is going on? Hogg turned to look at Linley. Father, you tell me. Is she my mother? Linley immediately asked. Yes. Absolutely, yes. Hogg was completely certain. They look absolutely identical. And her smell, I would never be able to forget it. Hogg could still remember the scent of his wife, Lena, as she lay against him. Upon seeing the brown-haired angel, he instantly became certain. This was his wife? Ha, Linley, so you are searching for your mother. Augusta began to laugh. No wonder you care so much about this matter, Linley. I told you long ago that this was her, no need to be worried. In addition, according to the intelligence reports that my subordinates provided, in the past 10,000 years, there have only been 3 deity-level angel souls provided by the Yulon plane, 2 men, 1 woman. Only 1 soul became a 12-winged angel, the woman's. It's actually quite odd. 10,000 years, the Yulon Plains Church offered that soul, but since then, they haven't offered any at all. But Linley knew why. It was because, the Radiant Church had been annihilated. Naturally, it wouldn't be able to sacrifice any more souls. For the 2 of you, mother and son, to be reunited is a joyous occasion. Augusta chortled as he spoke. The chief sovereign of fate, Orloff, chuckled and nodded slightly as well. Right. This is my mother. Linley didn't hide it at all, and he looked towards Augusta and said solemnly, Augusta, as I see it, let's do this quickly. Give my mother her free will back, and I will give you the blood essences of the 4 divine beasts. Right. Of the blood essences, there are only 28 drops of black tortoise blood essence, 2 drops are missing. Thus, I added 2 drops of vermilion bird blood essence to make up for it. Is that all right? That's not too much of an issue. Augusta looked towards Linley, then said slowly, Linley, I have to inform you of something. After you hear what I have to say, you can decide as to whether or not you wish to make this trade. Linley's heart trembled. He sensed that new variables were coming into play. Speak. Linley said. Augusta explained, angels are created from souls that were sacrificed in material planes. Through the angelic resurrection pools, they are reborn as angels. There is another often heard expression, that angels are human-shaped weapons, and that they can no longer be considered true living creatures at all. Do you know the true meaning within these words? Linley frowned. Couldn't be considered true living creatures. What did this mean? Augusta continued, for a mortal soul to be instantly transformed into a 12-winged angel, how could any living creature possibly instantly increase in power by that much? When they are transformed by the angelic resurrection pool, even their souls are slightly changed. Their souls are now no longer contained within their minds, but within their angel core. The angel core is the nucleus of their existence. Augusta explained. In addition, during the transformation, their soul will be changed as well, and all of their former memories will be wiped away. The only thing left to them will be their absolute loyalty to the sovereigns of light. Linley's heart trembled. Augusta, are you saying Linley had a rather foreboding feeling. Right. The angelic resurrection pools, the places where angels are created, aren't something that we are capable of creating. The changes they unleash upon the soul are irreversible. Your mother is currently under my control, but even if I give her freedom, your mother would be nothing more than an emancipated angel. She still won't have any of the memories from before she became an angel. Augusta looked at Linley. Linley instantly felt somewhat lost. He had thought that upon gaining her freedom, his mother would also regain her memories. But now, it seemed, that was completely impossible. Augusta's words were quite reasonable. It was the angelic resurrection pool which had transformed her. The only thing which Augusta could do was to give Linley's mother free will. He wasn't able to reverse the changes to her soul. Father. Linley turned to look at Hogg. The nearby Hogg had heard and understood. He knew that there was no way for his wife, Lena, to regain her memories. His face couldn't help but turn pale as well, but upon seeing Linley turn to him, Hogg still squeezed out a smile. He sent mentally, Linley, if there is no way to recover her memories, then there is no way. It will be as though your mother and I are meeting again for the first time. All right. Linley nodded slightly. Linley, if you aren't able to accept this, then we can just go ahead and put aside our agreement. The chief sovereign of light looked at Linley. No need. You can let my mother regain her freedom. Linley looked at the chief sovereign of light. Augusta nodded, then gritted his teeth and closed his eyes. Linley, through his fused divine sense, could tell that Augusta had sent out a tendril of his own divine sense into the mind of the angel. Slowly, Augusta's face began to turn rather pale. Humph! Augusta let out a low growl. Suddenly, Augusta's face turned bone white, and his entire body swayed uncontrollably. The nearby chief sovereign of fate, Orloff, waved his hand, sending out a surge of sovereign power to press against Augusta, preventing him from falling. Wait a while. I need to rest a moment. Augusta said, then immediately closed his eyes to focus internally. It seems as though Augusta's soul has been damaged. Linley watched this all happen. He had no idea at all as to the price which Augusta had paid to let Linley's mother recover her free will. However, from what the chief sovereign of death and others had said, Linley knew that there was definitely a very, very high price to be paid for allowing an angel to regain free will. Augusta didn't even ask Linley for the blood essences of the 4 divine beasts. He had first immediately begun to work to recover. And now, Linley looked towards his mother, Lena. Lena had only been frowning pensively earlier, but now, a look of surprised delight appeared on her face. Lena looked at Hogg. Slightly puzzled, she said, based on the conversation you had, you were my husband, prior to my transformation into an angel. Angels were all capable of logic and rational thought. They were angels and had no potential for future advancement, but they were absolutely dedicated to the sovereigns. Lena, I'm Hogg. Do you remember anything? Hogg immediately walked before her, his eyes shining. Do you still remember that torrential, pouring storm of rain we weathered together on Mt. Wushan? Do you still remember our home, Wushan Township? Do you remember that night when you were taken away from me, at that hotel in the city of Fenley? Lena was slightly startled. A lost look appeared in her eyes, and she shook her head slightly. I don't. Hogg's eyes couldn't help but darken, but he immediately said, that's fine. You'll know in the future. I'll take you back to the Yulon Plain. I know that I became a 12-winged angel less than 10,000 years ago. Lena then let out a beautiful smile. And I also have the feeling, that your aura seems so familiar. Even though, in my memories, I can't find a reason why. Despite having had her soul transformed, there was still a hint of blurry recognition in her subconscious. With regards to the person she had loved in her former life. Truly. Hogg couldn't help but feel wildly overjoyed. Yes. Lena nodded slightly. Linley, watching this to one side, couldn't help but feel rather satisfied in his heart. Although his mother had already lost her previous memories after becoming an angel, perhaps because of what had happened in her previous life, she still had special feelings towards Hogg. How terrible! The ashen-faced Augusta opened his eyes, the light in them slightly dimmer than before. He glanced sideways at Linley. Although I understood that the price to be paid for allowing an angel to regain free will would be very high, I have never actually done such a thing in the past. The price was even greater than what I had expected. The nearby chief sovereign of fate, Orloff, chuckled. Augusta, since you've already done it, what's the point of feeling regret? Give me the blood essences of the 4 divine beasts. Augusta looked towards Linley. Linley didn't play any tricks either. Waving his hand, he made 4 small bottles appear. 11 drops of azure dragon blood essence, 28 of the black tortoise, 30 of the white tiger, and 32 for the vermilion bird. Augusta swept the bottles with his divine sense, and a hint of a smile finally appeared on his face. I hope this doesn't disappoint me. Augusta murmured, and he collected the 4 bottles. The nearby chief sovereign of fate, Orloff, couldn't help but look at the 4 bottles, his eyes flashing with light. He very much wanted to be in possession of those 4 bottles, and given his power, there was no way at all that Linley and Augusta would be able to resist him. However, giving his pride, the chief sovereign of fate, Orloff, just quietly watched as this all happened. Augusta, this matter is concluded. I will leave now. Linley said. Augusta didn't try to keep him for any longer. Immediately afterwards, Linley took his father, Hogg, and his mother, Lena, and departed, transforming into a streak of green light which disappeared into the horizons. In mid-flight, Linley let out a secret sigh of relief as he watched his mother and his father chat. It is fortunate that mother seems to have a slight, faint impression of father. Otherwise, she probably wouldn't be willing to leave with us. Her memories, alas, the angelic resurrection pool really is, ugh. There was nothing which Linley could do at all. When ordinary mortals died, they would transform into departed souls. The weaker ones would transform into weak undead, while the strong ones would transform into powerful undead. The soul itself wouldn't change at all, and upon becoming a deity, the undead would regain their memories. But angels were completely different. His mother had been an ordinary mortal, but after her transformation, she had become a 12-winged angel, comparable to a 7-star fiend. For her to have increased in power by that much without her soul being impacted? Not even Linley would believe that. Now, the only option is to rely on time. To let mother slowly grow accustomed to us and accept us. Although Linley was slightly disappointed, the smile on his father's face brought him a hint of satisfaction as well. Book 21, The Peak, Chapter 28, Beginning to Act. A month later. The higher plane of the infernal realm. Blood Ridge Continent, Indigo Prefecture, the Skirite Mountains. Haha, a 3-year-old toddler was happily running about on the grass. Hogg and Lena were seated to one side, accompanying the toddler in playing about. Linley, Wharton, and BB sat together, watching this scene. Big brother, look at father. Ever since mother returned, father's been much happier. Wharton laughed as he spoke. In the past, although father would occasionally be happy when seeing us, he would always be thinking of mother, and he would then seem so dispirited. He's fine now. He is. Linley smiled and let out an emotional sigh. His mother, Lena, had been back for a month now. During this period of time, the relationship between Linley's father and mother had advanced considerably. However, Lena clearly found it much harder to accept Linley and Wharton. Although she often smiled when meeting Linley and Wharton, and had grown a bit closer to them, the way she treated Linley and Wharton clearly could not be compared with the way she treated Hogg. Perhaps it was because, when Lena had died, Linley had only been a 4-year-old child, while Wharton had been a mere newborn. Lena's subconscious didn't have any memories of the adult Linley or Wharton. After a bit of time, father will take mother back to the Yulon Plain. At that point in time, when she sees MT Wushan and our old home, perhaps mother will start to remember. Wharton said. Because of Linley's unique stature within the Yulon Plain, their ancestral estate had been kept in very good condition. When the time comes, I will return alongside father and mother. Linley laughed calmly. I am also going to begin establishing my divine plane of wind. Boss, I want to go as well. Bibi said hurriedly. I want to see you set up your divine wind of plane as well, boss. I'm only sending my wind-type sovereign clone over, and not my other clones. Linley said with a laugh. Right at this moment, Linley suddenly raised his head as he thought to himself, Boson came. Linley's divine sense had discovered that the blood-rich sovereign was hastening towards him. Wait here for now. I need to go back to my residence. Linley said, and then with a flicker, he arrived within the residence he used for training. Linley's residence was a place where not even maids could enter without permission. Linley sat down next to a stone table for a few moments, and a blood-robed figure descended from the skies. It was the blood-rich sovereign, Boson. Boson, please sit. Linley said with a laugh. Linley, this is my second time coming to your place in just 1 or 2 months. The blood-rich sovereign laughed. Right, last time, I chatted with you a bit regarding the 10th Planar War. You seem to have encountered some problems back then. Have those been resolved? During their last chat, Linley's face had suddenly turned so ugly, and he had completely lost his composure. Naturally, the blood-rich sovereign had noticed. This was why he had stopped chatting with Linley and had instead immediately left. Apologies. Last time, I did indeed encounter some problems. Linley laughed, then stretched his hand out and personally poured some wine for himself and the blood-rich sovereign. However, everything has now been resolved. It is good that it has been resolved. The blood-rich sovereign laughed. Linley, when will you begin to search for emissaries? Boson. It appears you care about this matter quite a bit. Linley tipped his cup slightly towards the blood-rich sovereign, who let out a resigned laugh and raised his own cup. The two immediately drowned their cups, and then the blood-rich sovereign said helplessly, I'm not the one who cares. This is an assignment which the chief sovereign of destruction has given me. He knows that we are on fairly close terms. Linley nodded slightly. In addition, virtually all the other sovereigns already have emissaries. Those emissaries were carefully selected by their sovereigns, who aren't willing to just throw them away to their deaths. Even if the sovereigns were willing, the emissaries probably wouldn't be. The blood-rich sovereign explained. Emissaries wouldn't necessarily follow every single order of a sovereign. If a sovereign sent an emissary out to die, could it be that the emissary would actually accept? So what, I'm supposed to send my emissaries out to die? Linley rebutted. Linley. The blood-rich sovereign said hurriedly. That's not what we mean. You should go casually pick out some emissary candidates, then tell them that if they want to be your emissary, they have to be tested in the planar battlefield. You will first give them a sovereign artifact. If they survive, they will become a true emissary. If they die, then in the future, you can find other emissaries. The blood-rich sovereign let out a laugh. As I see it, there will be quite a few people who are willing to risk their lives for the chance to become a sovereign's emissary. You people, you really are sending them to their deaths, you know. Linley truly wanted to curse. They are naturally going of their own free will. The blood-rich sovereign laughed smugly. We aren't forcing them to go. True, they weren't being forced. Those people who were already emissaries naturally wouldn't go risk their lives for the sake of a bit of sovereign's might. but it was much more likely for those who had not yet become emissaries to be willing to risk themselves for the sake of becoming an emissary and receiving a sovereign artifact. The deities who dared to roam about the higher planes and the divine planes were mostly an adventuresome lot to begin with. When it was necessary, they would be willing to give the dice a roll. Success meant they would have a sovereign artifact and become an emissary, gaining status that was even higher than an Asura's. They would become one of the most elite deities in existence. Failure. Naturally, they would perish. The other sovereigns already have emissaries, they don't have any spare spots on the roster. But you do, and you have 6 of them. The blood-rich sovereign let out a sigh. There will be very, very few commander-level experts who will enter this planar war. Thus, 6 emissaries will be akin to the edge of the blade, the vanguard for the armies. As long as they aren't so stupid as to just fight head-on, the 6 of them will be extremely useful. Linley nodded slightly as well. Commander-level experts would naturally be of tremendous use in the planar wars. But the most useful of all would be paragons. Why don't you go find a few paragons? Paragons are even more effective. Linley said. In the past, the paragons were fearless, but this time, Linley, think about it. Every single person who enters will have sovereign's might. The blood-rich sovereign couldn't help but laugh. A group attack. With every single person using sovereign's might at full power, even a paragon would be in mortal danger. Tell me, what can sovereigns use to persuade those paragons to enter? Unless they are provided with something sufficiently alluring, they won't possibly enter. Linley had to nod in acknowledgement. It was true that sovereigns didn't have enough they could use to entice paragons to enter. Sovereign artifacts? They were limited to bestowing a single sovereign artifact to their emissaries. Aside from sovereign artifacts, what else could attract the interest of a paragon? Paragons, when facing an entire army of high gods who all use sovereign's might, will probably have a 50% chance of death. The blood-rich sovereign said. As for commanders, even if they are careful, the chance that they will die in such a terrible situation is probably greater than 90%. If they are so stupid as to try and fight head-on, they will definitely perish. The blood-rich sovereign let out a resigned laugh. Thus, please invite a few emissaries to enter the planar war. If this time, we are successful, I imagine that the chief sovereign of destruction will be grateful to you. Linley understood that although the blood-rich sovereign had nominally come to chat with him, in reality, he was here carrying out the orders of the chief sovereign of destruction. All right. I agree. Linley nodded. For the chief sovereign of destruction to owe him a debt was a good thing. As for emissaries, although this was extremely dangerous for them, it was also an opportunity. The only question was, would they have the skill to survive it? Haha, that's more like it. The blood-rich sovereign was quite pleased. Right. When will you head out? Head out? No rush. I'm still thinking about it. Where should I go to find emissaries? Linley said helplessly. Even if I send my divine sense out to cover the entire infernal realm, I'm only able to tell the difference between demigods, gods, and high gods. There's no way for me to tell how many profound mysteries a person has fused. The blood-rich sovereign let out a laugh. I have 2 methods. I don't know which one you will prefer. Speak. Linley's eyes lit up. The first is to go to a fiend castle and acquire data on all 7 star fiends. Since it is the chief sovereign of destruction who stands behind the fiend castle, it will be very easy for you to acquire all the information you want on the various 7 star fiends. The blood-rich sovereign said with a laugh. Linley nodded slightly, but at the same time, he sighed in his heart. So it was the chief sovereign of destruction who stood as the backer for the fiend castles. No wonder it was spread throughout the infernal realm. And the second method? Linley asked with a laugh. Linley, all of the sovereigns have their own domains of authority. The blood-rich sovereign laughed. For example, my domain is the Blood Ridge continent. The Redbud continent belongs to the Redbud sovereign. The 7 sovereigns of light, in the divine light plane, each have 7 areas which they have authority over. Linley suddenly began to understand. Per the same principles, the 7 sovereigns of wind, the 7 sovereigns of earth, and the 7 sovereigns of water all have their own territories. The Blood Ridge sovereign laughed. The domain you rule over in the divine wind plane is the domain which that Terracia, who you killed, ruled over. The same goes for the divine earth plane and the divine water plane. The Lord Prefects and other similarly ranked individuals in each domain, along with the soldiers of that domain, will all obey your commands. The Blood Ridge sovereign laughed calmly. You can simply go to one of your domains, then easily learn which experts reside within the bounds of your domains. My domains. 3 of them. Linley couldn't help but laugh. Sovereigns might die, but the domains do not change, nor will the Lord Prefects. For example, even if someone killed me, Bosan, once the next sovereign of destruction arose, that person would still be in charge of the Blood Ridge continent. All of the Lord Prefects of the Blood Ridge continent, as well as the Blood Ridge army, would obey that person's orders. The Blood Ridge sovereign explained. Oh, Linley began to laugh. I choose the second method. I'll simultaneously choose emissaries as well as familiarize myself with my territory. This sort of system was very natural. The battles between sovereigns thus wouldn't affect the boundaries of each domain. Linley, I know that you have only recently become a sovereign, and so you don't have many sovereign artifacts. I have a few here, 3 weapon-type sovereign artifacts, 3 defensive sovereign artifacts, and 3 soul-protecting sovereign artifacts. The Blood Ridge sovereign casually waved his hand, and 9 sovereign artifacts appeared, hovering in midair. The defensive sovereign artifacts were all in the form of armor, while the sovereign weapons were divided into axe, longsword, and warblade, these 3 commonly seen artifacts. As for the soul-protecting sovereign artifacts, they were divided into a ring, an earring, and a necklace. You have quite a few. Linley couldn't help but chuckle. The Blood Ridge sovereign said disdainfully, sovereign artifacts, to sovereigns, are in plentiful supply. They are to us what divine artifacts are to deities. How many divine artifacts exist in the infernal realm, do you think? Linley had to nod in acknowledgement. In the infernal realm, divine artifacts were commonplace tools that could be seen everywhere. Even divine sparks were numerous beyond measure, to say nothing of divine artifacts. Our fear is that too many sovereign artifacts would lead to a disaster, which is why the sovereigns originally created the agreement that each emissary would only be given a single sovereign artifact. Similarly, you would only be able to, at most, give a son, a daughter, a wife, or a husband a single sovereign artifact. Aside from emissaries and close family, sovereign artifacts cannot be handed out to anyone else. The Blood Ridge sovereign said. Linley memorized this as well. Half a month later, Linley's wind-type sovereign clone returned to the Yulon Plain along with his father and mother. The 2 of them naturally went to Wushan Township, while Linley's wind-type sovereign clone tore through the walls of space and entered chaotic space, right outside the Yulon Plain, beginning to establish his own divine plane of wind. Only by increasing his insights in the profound mysteries of the laws of the wind would Linley find it easier to learn how to travel on the path of fusing 4 types of laws. His wind-type sovereign clone was establishing a divine plane, while his water sovereign clone, and divine fire clone remained on guard in the infernal realm while accompanying his wife, Delia. As for Linley's original body and his earth-type sovereign clone, they left the infernal realm. Rumble. A blurry light flashed as Linley and BB activated the teleportation array. Boss, this time, as we go searching for emissaries, you need to leave 2 slots to me and let me make the choice. Heh, I want to try out the process of choosing emissaries and see how it feels. BB sent. No problem. Linley laughed. The blurry light which had shot into the heavens slowly vanished. Linley and BB had already arrived in another plane. "We are at the Divine Wind plane." BB's eyes lit up as he sent, "Come, boss, let's go check out your territory." Book 21, The Peak, Chapter 29, Wind Hunter. The Divine Wind Plane. The Kinja continent. In the skies, a sword-shaped metallic life form was advancing at high speed, moving like a flash of light. Linley and BB were seated opposite of each other. Next to them, a 2-meter-tall man with black hair that gleamed like iron needles was standing respectfully. The black-haired man said courteously, "Sovereign, based on the intelligence reports of our Kinja army, in the Kinja continent, there are more than 1,000 supreme experts worthy of your consideration, Sovereign. We can just select a location, then begin to choose from them. But right now, we..." Linley glanced at the black-haired fellow, then chuckled, "Buebuletin, are you in a rush?" "No, no." The black-haired fellow instantly shook his head. The Divine Wind Plane had a total of 9 major continents, which were divided up according to the various levels of power of the 7 sovereigns. The ocean was extremely large, but was completely controlled by the chief sovereign of Wind, who also had his own continent on top of that. The other lesser sovereigns were only in control of 1 continent each, while the intermediate sovereigns controlled 2 each. The continent which Terracia had controlled was the Kinja continent. And so, Linley's territory within the Divine Wind Plane was naturally the Kinja continent as well. The Kinja continent had the Kinja army, which was directly subordinate to the Kinja sovereign. The Kinja army's commander was this Bu. This sovereign has quite a strange temperament, but he's not a bad fellow. Bu mused to himself. Still, how powerful is Sovereign Linley, exactly? Why is it that from the earlier conversation between Lord Linley and Chief Sovereign Dia, I seemed to feel as though Lord Dia was somewhat afraid of Lord Linley? Why did he speak so pleasantly towards him? One is a chief sovereign, while the other is a sovereign. But it seems as though the positions are reversed. Bu was filled with confusion. Upon arriving at the Divine Wind Plane, Linley had naturally gone to seek out the chief sovereign of Wind, Dia. Dia, upon seeing that Linley had come to pay him a visit, was so frightened that the look on his face had changed. Dia still remembered quite clearly the sight of Linley easily using a single sword blow to badly wound the chief sovereign of Lightning, eradicating his Earth sovereign clone and frightening him so badly that he had fled without even daring to look back. Given Linley's power, it would be very easy for him to eradicate the chief sovereign of Wind, Dia. What was worse was that Linley and Dia didn't have a good relationship between them, only enmity. Upon seeing Linley arrive, naturally Dia had been frightened. However, Linley hadn't attacked, and instead discussed the matter of territory with him. Dia had immediately offered to gift Linley with the continent he controlled, but Linley had declined. Afterwards, Dia had personally taken Linley to locate the commander of the Kinja army, Bu, and had told Bu that Linley was now the controller of the Kinja continent. Bu, however, had paid close attention to the attitudes and speaking mannerisms of the two as they had chatted, and he had instantly grown puzzled. After all, while chatting with Linley, Dia would subconsciously act as though he were on a lower level. "Bu, don't be impatient. Let us now go to the Blue Lion domain," Linley said with a calm laugh. "Sovereign, are you planning to?" A thought instantly arose in Bu's mind. The nearby BB snickered, "My boss is naturally intending to go to the Blue Lion domain to see that challenge. You must understand that the challenge will take place a month from now. My boss naturally is in no hurry, so we can just fly there slowly in this metallic life form. We should arrive in the Blue Lion domain just in time. Given how fast sovereigns traveled at, they could arrive in the Blue Fire domain in an hour or so." However, Linley instead chose to leisurely ride aboard his metallic life form and roam about slowly. This so-called leisurely speed, however, was only leisurely for sovereigns. To ordinary high gods, their metallic life form was flying about at terrifying speeds. Sovereigns really have too much time on their hands. Boo mused to himself. Boss, how much time do you plan to spend on your search for your 6 emissaries? BB sent. It has been many years since we've gone out for a stroll. This time, we need to wander around a bit longer. Although they were nominally searching for emissaries, in truth, they were also relaxing themselves. No rush. This divine plane is vast and endless, all we need to do is finish finding the emissaries before the planar war begins. Linley said with a laugh. Actually, it is fine if we finish after the planar war begins. After all, during the course of the planar war, commander-level experts can still enter. BB snickered. The commander of the Kinja army, Boo, blinked as he listened. The Divine Wind Plane. The Kinja continent. The Blue Lion domain. Sovereign, today is the day of the challenge. The 7-star Wind Hunter, Russell Lasser, will be challenging the Lord of the Blue Lion domain, Ambarafael Wumubuletin Lafaer. This 7-star Wind Hunter, Russell, is very famous in our Divine Wind Plane, and is legendary for his speed and guile. But of course, his power is tremendous as well. Boo said respectfully through divine sense. At this moment, Linley and BB were striding up a mountain, shoulder to shoulder, while the black-haired Boo followed from behind. Russell. Linley still remembered the many scryer recordings which the intelligence networks had provided him via Boo. They had described more than 1,000 experts of the Kinja continent, each of which was at least a 7-star Wind Hunter in power, and who all had their own supreme techniques. Wind Hunter was a term of address in the Divine Wind Plane. This was much like how Fiend was a term of address in the Infernal Realm. A 7-star Wind Hunter was the same as a 7-star Fiend. Today's battle will occur deep within the mountain gorge. Quite a few people have come to watch. Boo sent mentally. Linley nodded slightly. Many figures flew past them in midair. Even this mountain road had quite a few figures on it. Only, the deities all advanced in a graceful, fast manner, bounding forward 1,000 kilometers with just a few steps. Although Linley's group of 3 didn't want to astonish the ordinary people present, they still traveled dozens of kilometers with each step. Boo, unless someone has intentionally transformed himself into the challenger, Russell, I think he is right behind us. Linley said with a calm laugh. Oh. Boo was rather surprised. As a sovereign, how tremendous was Linley's divine sense. He could easily detect that a person was agilely flying forwards. Curious, Linley glanced towards this Russell. Russell was a youth who was handsome enough to make any woman fall for him. He appeared rather weak and soft, and he had a smile that could mesmerize the gods themselves. It could be said that if Russell was a woman, he definitely would have caused countless deities to go wild for him. But fortunately, he was a man. Although his soft and feminine looks made many people dislike him, his innate charisma made it so that quite a few people would immediately feel kindly disposed towards him upon seeing him. It has been so many years. Given my current power, I should be able to act against Ambarafael by now. Russell flew across the mountain forests while musing to himself. It doesn't matter. After having reached this level in my training, it is virtually impossible for me to advance any further. I'm not willing to wait any longer either. There were quite a few figures about this mountainous forest. While flying over, Russell's gaze suddenly focused, then tightened. Is that? Russell was greatly shocked. BB. And the paragon, Linley. Russell swept the two of them with his gaze. He didn't recognize Commander Boo of the Kinja army, only Linley and BB. Boo, as the commander, rarely showed his face. There were quite a few legends regarding him in the Divine Wind Plane, but very, very few who had actually met him. As for Linley and BB, prior to this, Linley's defeat of Magnus during the Planar War had caused his name to become widespread. Quite a few people had recorded down scryer recordings of that battle, and even BB had been recorded down alongside Linley. Naturally, the information regarding Linley and BB had quickly spread to the various planes. Virtually all figures at the 7-star fiend level or higher would know about him, so long as they weren't complete recluses. Swoosh! Russell's body flickered as he flew towards Linley's group of 3. Linley couldn't help but turn to look at Russell. This Russell revealed a laugh on his face, and he immediately set up a God realm, separating this region from the outside world. He said respectfully, "Greetings, Mr. Linley." Linley was stunned. "You know my boss." BB was rather surprised as well. Russell laughed. In the past, when Mr. Linley battled Magnus and exiled Magnus into chaotic space, the battle was recorded down. Those scryer recordings have spread quite far, and some of my friends and I have watched them. Ever since that day, I memorized your appearance, Mr. Linley. Naturally, I also memorized Mr. Linley's good friend, BB as well. Linley and BB exchanged glances. I overlooked that. Linley laughed helplessly as his appearance changed. After becoming a sovereign, Linley had become much less vigilant. In the entire universe, only the chief sovereigns of the edicts were capable of causing him to feel concerned. He had come to the Divine Wind Plane to roam about with the intent of being a tourist, and so he hadn't really thought things over. Only now did he realize that there was a problem here. "Mr. Linley, your aura is completely retracted. After changing your appearance, others won't be able to recognize you." Russell immediately laughed. "You were able to recognize me just based on appearance?" Linley asked with some curiosity. "Appearance was part of it. The second part was the fact that your aura was completely retracted. For even me to be unable to sense it, definitely means that this person's power vastly surpasses my own." Russell laughed. Why would someone on this level of power be so bored as to impersonate someone else? That was why I was certain that the person in front of me was definitely you, Mr. Linley. Linley couldn't help but laugh. "You are quite meticulous, it seems. Quite clever. However, today, you are going to go challenge that Lord of the Blue Lion domain, yes?" BB let out a chortle. "Kid, are you confident in being able to win?" "I'm not. However, it won't be easy for him to defeat me either." Russell laughed calmly. Linley and BB thus headed off towards the deep gorge alongside Russell. Boo, by their side, laughed secretly. Russell only knows that Lord Linley is a paragon, but he has no idea that Lord Linley is now a sovereign. If he knew, he most likely wouldn't act so casually. Boo had changed his appearance long ago. Only someone extremely familiar with Boo would be able to recognize him. In addition, as the commander of the Kinja army, Boo rarely had to show himself, and so very few people knew him. Deep within the wide, spacious gorge within the mountains, there was a dense assemblage of more than 1,000,000 people. All of them chatted quietly, while the many soldiers maintained military order. Linley's group of 4 arrived in the front of the crowd. A black-robed elder spied Russell from afar. He couldn't help but feel excited as he hurriedly went to greet him. "Mr. Russell, the Domain Lord has already arrived and is waiting for you." "Humph, he came quite quickly. However, after today, the position of Lord of the Blue Lion Domain will be mine." Russell let out a cold laugh, then turned and glanced at Linley's group of 3. He sent mentally, "Mr. Linley, you'll have to excuse me for now. I'm going to go fight Ambaraphael. We will watch here." BB chortled. Russell immediately flew into the skies, towards the empty central area. The handsome, delicate-looking Russell's eyes were currently filled with a cold, steely, knife-like look. He swept the area with his gaze, then let out a cold laugh before falling silent. "Russell. It is Russell." Instantly, the 1,000,000+ spectating deities all grew excited. A flood of discourse instantly began to erupt. "Everyone!" A clear voice rang out, echoing throughout the valley. Instantly, All the spectators fell silent. The speaker was the black-robed elder who had welcomed Russell. The black-robed elder hovered there in midair, saying in a clear voice, "This battle involves the 7-star Wind Hunter, Russell, and our domain lord. Russell has already appeared. Immediately afterwards, let us welcome his lordship, Lord Ambaraphael." Instantly, the distant group of soldiers suddenly split apart, creating a human corridor. A muscular man who was 3 meters tall, dressed completely in blue furs, walked over, step by step. This man's face was covered with fur as well, and his eyes glowed dimly with a fear-inducing green light. The domain lord of the Blue Lion domain, Ambaraphael. At this moment, the bestial-looking lord of the Blue Lion domain was currently staring towards Russell. The battle was about to begin. "Boss, who do you think will win?" BB, also watching the battle, sent mentally to Linley. "Do you truly think me omniscient?" Linley let out a calm laugh. "Let's just watch. Aside from that challenge I personally issued, after going through those 100 arena battles, I've never before seen anyone challenge a Lord Prefect or a Domain Lord." Book 21, The Peak, Chapter 30, Sovereign's Emissaries. The million-plus deities watching all held their breaths. The massive valley was completely silent. "I didn't expect, Russell, that a coward like you would dare to challenge me." A deep, rumbling voice rang out from the mouth of the Lord of the Blue Lion domain. The Lord stared with bestial eyes towards Russell. "In the past, during the Wind Hunter trials, the only thing you were able to do was hide and quiver, you coward." Upon hearing this, Russell's face turned as cold as ice water. A sharp look flashed through his eyes as he said, "Don't be smug. After today, the position of Lord of Blue Lion domain will no longer be yours. You seem quite confident." The Lord of the Blue Lion domain snickered. The Lord of the Blue Lion domain stretched out his divine sense. It was only natural, when battle began, relying on one's eyes alone wasn't enough. Using divine sense to keep track of one's surroundings was important. It must be understood that this empty space in midair had a circumference of multiple kilometers. Upon reaching out with his divine sense, the Lord of the Blue Lion domain naturally also encompassed the surrounding spectators with it, including Linley, BB, and Boo. Bouvier Bouletin Way. The Lord of the Blue Lion domain was shocked. As domain lords under the command of the sovereign, all domain lords naturally would occasionally gather to pay their respects to their sovereign. At times like that, they would see the commander of the army, Bouvier. Although Bouvier had changed his appearance, there was no way he could change his soul aura. Thus, this Oberaphael, the Lord of the Blue Lion domain, naturally was able to instantly recognize who Bouvier truly was. Boo was nothing more than a nickname the sovereigns had given Bouvier. The other domain lords all generally referred to him as Mr. Bouvier. Why is Bouvier here? In addition, he seems to be extremely respectful towards the two next to him. That youngster is a high god, I can tell. But as for that brown-haired man, Also, given that Bouvier is the commander of the Kinja army, he wouldn't act so respectfully, even towards paragons. The Lord of the Blue Lion domain came to a conclusion. Can it be that this person is a sovereign? This conclusion badly shocked the Lord of the Blue Lion domain. "Oberapfel, fight as you normally would." A voice rang out in the Lord of the Blue Lion domain's voice. The speaker was Bouvier. Bouvier knew that this old acquaintance had recognized him. "Mr. Bouvier, the person next to you," the Lord of the Blue Lion domain immediately sent back. "Pretend you didn't find out." Bouvier sent to him. The Lord of the Blue Lion domain was now completely convinced as to who the brown-haired man was. "I didn't expect that the sovereign would actually come to my place. Right, this victory has to be a clean one." The Lord of the Blue Lion domain, upon learning that his sovereign was watching, felt his intent for battle surge. He gave the distant Russell a cold glance, laughing in his heart. Suddenly, bang! It was as though the air exploded. The Lord of the Blue Lion domain seemed to instantly cross the distance of 100 meters between them. His giant, boulder-like fist surged forth, flashing with black light as it slashed out in a strange arc. It was like a meteor flashing through the heavens, piercing through the skies and striking towards Russell. World Meteor. This was one of the supreme techniques available to Ambaraphael, the Lord of the Blue Lion domain. Russell's face turned cold. Swish. A dazzling blade flashed, releasing a waterfall of power and tearing through the surrounding space. The Scion saber flash clashed directly head-on against the dazzling, meteoric fist. Russell, his Scion scimitar in hand, borrowed from the force of the collision to retreat backwards gracefully at high speed. With a Scion flash, he retreated tens of meters away into the skies, but immediately afterwards, Russell's body actually moved away by another few dozen kilometers, moving so quickly as to astonish all the watchers. What astonishing speed! BB sighed in amazement. Even faster than most commanders. Linley's eyes lit up as well. The nearby Boo sent mentally, Sovereign, both Russell and Ambaraphael are divine beasts. Russell is a nine-tailed wind ripper fox, and is innately gifted with great speed. Given that he also trains in the laws of the wind, it is only natural that he is extremely fast. In addition, as a nine-tailed wind ripper fox, he is born with great mesmerizing abilities, and the mesmerizing power of his soul is also quite terrifying. He is very hard to deal with. Not bad. The first candidate I encounter seems to be quite excellent. Linley had a hint of a smile on his face. The Lord of the Blue Lion domain stood there, like an unbreakable fortress. As for Russell, he moved about at high speed, constantly changing his location, launching attacks from various angles. It has been so many years, but you coward, are still only able to run about and flee. The Lord of the Blue Lion domain let out a snicker, then his gaze slowly turned cold. Russell, I have no time to waste with you. Bang. The Lord of the Blue Lion domain's body suddenly began to blaze with an earthen yellow aura. Earth-type sovereign's might? You have it, do you think I do not? Russell let out a cold laugh as well, and his body also began to blaze with a faint green aura. Since he had dared to come issue this challenge, Russell naturally had also prepared in advance. And then... Skreek! An ear-piercing sound suddenly rang out from Russell's throat. An enormous, cyan-furred fox phantom, hundreds of meters in size, suddenly appeared behind Russell. This cyan-furred fox had 9 furry tails, all of which were swaying gently. Anyone who stared at them would actually, unknowingly, begin to grow dizzy. Quite a few of the spectating deities actually fell to the ground. Innate divine ability, mesmerizing fantasy domain. A translucent sword shadow flashed out from Russell's mouth, shooting directly towards the distant Lord of the Blue Lion domain. The Lord of the Blue Lion domain, upon receiving this strike, swayed slightly. Roar! The Lord of the Blue Lion domain suddenly let out an enraged howl. An enormous, 1,000-meter-tall, snowy-furred bear suddenly appeared, its jade-green eyes staring towards Russell. The bear smote itself on its chest with its 2 massive, clawed bear paws. Bang! With an enormous collision sound, an earthen yellow ripple blasted out from the bear's chest in every direction, instantly encompassing an area of many kilometers, with Russell naturally being within this field as well. Innate divine ability, world collapser. In the same instant, that translucent sword shape surged into the Lord of Blue Lion domain's body, but the Lord of Blue Lion domain's body only trembled. It didn't seem to have much of an impact on him. Bastard! How could this fellow's soul defense be so strong? How could my full power attack have had such a limited impact on him? Russell cursed angrily to himself. Haha, the Lord of Blue Lion domain charged towards Russell. Not good. Russell's face changed dramatically. He could clearly sense that the surrounding area had changed. That constant surge of ripples seemed to have formed into layers of waves that surged around him, and even created a unique gravitational space type of effect around him. This technique drastically impacted Russell's speed. Russell knew that the situation was bad, but it was too late. Haha, laughing wildly, the Lord of Blue Lion Domain now used his most powerful attack, in conjunction with his unleashed innate divine ability. A pair of enormous fists pierced through the skies like a pair of horned dragons, causing spatial whirlpools to appear and space to collapse. Not good. Russell retreated frantically, but within the innate divine ability field, his speed was inferior to his opponent's. All he could do was roar in anger and furiously smash out with his blade. Burst. The Lord of Blue Lion Domain let out a furious roar. The twin fists that had tore through the skies suddenly exploded with power. Bang. The scimitar actually broke apart, inch by inch, and Russell's body began to shake. How could this be? I'm finished. Russell only felt a sense of powerlessness. The Lord of Blue Lion Domain, Ambaraphael, suddenly stared towards the front, baffled. Where did he go? Russell, who had been in a violent battle against the Lord of Blue Lion Domain just moments ago, had now disappeared into thin air. Where did he go? How could this be? Can it be that the Lord of Blue Lion Domain blasted Russell into nothingness? The million-plus spectating deities stared, stupefied. They had watched as Russell had actually disappeared into thin air. Domain Lord. The black-robed elder immediately flew over, looking towards the Lord of Blue Lion Domain. Ambaraphael, the Lord of Blue Lion Domain, immediately turned to look towards Linley's direction. Only, Linley and the other two had already disappeared. Indeed, it was the sovereign who intervened. Just now, the Lord of Blue Lion Domain had only sensed a blur flash past. Before he was even able to react, Russell had disappeared. Why did the sovereign rescue Russell? The Lord of Blue Lion Domain was puzzled, but then he gave the black-robed elder a glance. All right. This battle is over. Announce the results. And thus, the Lord of Blue Lion Domain led his forces to depart in a grand fashion. The Lord of Blue Lion Domain was the victor of this battle. 1,000,000 kilometers away, atop a grassland. Bang. With a casual toss, Linley sent Russell landing heavily on the grass. 1,000,000 kilometers. Given a sovereign's speed, at full power, less than a second was needed to traverse this distance. Russell had only felt his body tremble. The next thing he saw was that his surroundings had completely changed. There were no spectating deities nearby, nor was there the Lord of Blue Lion Domain, against who he had been battling. The surrounding area was completely empty. Before him was only Linley, Bibi, and Boo. Thank you, Sovereign. Russell immediately knelt down towards Linley. Hey, how'd you know my boss is a sovereign? Bibi laughed, puzzled. Russell said respectfully, just now, I was in dire straits. Everyone else was far away. Not even a paragon would be able to block the strikes of a commander-level expert from so far away. Only sovereigns are capable of this. A sovereign could kill a commander-level expert from even millions of kilometers away with but a thought, much less from just a few kilometers away. Naturally, however, they wouldn't be able to do that to paragons. Just now, Linley had simply sent out his will and released a surge of sovereign power to help Russell slightly, and then had used it to wrap up Russell, then bring him, Bibi, and Boo here instantly. Russell, have you realized what went wrong in that battle? Linley laughed calmly. Russell nodded immediately, a hint of puzzlement flashing through his eyes. It really was quite odd. I had prepared very thoroughly for this battle, even if I lost, I wouldn't possibly die. But, I discovered that my innate divine ability, when combined with my most powerful soul attack, actually didn't have much of an impact on him. This is simply inconceivable. This is because he has a soul-protecting sovereign artifact. Linley laughed calmly. Sovereign, He isn't an emissary. The nearby Boo said, puzzled. Right. He isn't an emissary. Russell said hurriedly as well. I investigated this matter long ago. In addition, given Ambaraphael's arrogant nature, if he became a sovereign's emissary, he would definitely announce it right away. He wouldn't be able to hide it for long. Do you think that my divine sense was mistaken? Linley said calmly. Russell and Boo immediately no longer dared to argue. Doesn't that mean I will never be able to defeat him? Russell couldn't help but laugh bitterly. Linley said with a casual laugh, Russell, I have a test for you. If you participate in it, the chances of death are close to 90%, but if you accept, you will become one of my emissaries. If you are willing, then upon accepting, even before the trial, I will bestow you with a sovereign artifact of your choice. Russell's eyes lit up. To a 7-star fiend level expert, a sovereign artifact was extremely alluring. Dare I ask, Sovereign, what is the test? Russell said hurriedly. It is a planar war. Linley immediately began to speak in detail regarding this event. Although he didn't say anything about 10 successive victories, he gave a full explanation regarding how dangerous this planar war would be. Every person will have sovereign's might. Upon entering, you will be in great danger. You can give up this opportunity, if you choose. Russell hesitated momentarily, then laughed. Sovereign, I accept. I specialize in speed. Given my innate divine ability, my soul is also extremely strong. If I were to acquire a defensive sovereign artifact, I imagine that I will have at least a 30% chance of survival. I'm willing to take this gamble. If I fail, at most, I will lose my most powerful divine clone. But if I win? Linley nodded slightly. In choosing emissaries, he had to choose those who particularly excelled in either soul attacks or material attacks. That way, by giving them a sovereign artifact, he could make up for their deficiency and so increase their chances of survival. Then I will bestow you with a defensive sovereign artifact. Linley waved his hand, and a set of sovereign armor appeared. Russell's eyes immediately began to blaze. Thank you, Sovereign. Russell immediately knelt down, accepting this sovereign artifact. All right. Let's head out now, in search of the next emissary. Linley laughed calmly. The next one. Russell was startled. This time, we are preparing to find 6 emissaries. You are only the first one. BB snickered. Linley's group treated this as a form of tourism as well, touring while choosing acceptable candidates. Upon traveling through the Divine Wind Plane, they would go to the Divine Water Plane, and then would go to the Divine Earth Plane. Time slowly passed by. I bestow upon you a soul-protecting sovereign artifact. You will become the second emissary under my control. Linley withdrew a sovereign artifact in the shape of an earring as he spoke. Thank you, Sovereign. A bald man whose entire body seemed to be formed from azure rocks fell to his knees. I bestow upon you a defensive sovereign artifact. You will become the third emissary under my control. Linley withdrew yet another set of sovereign armor. Thank you, Sovereign. A jade-haired woman who had a patch of fish scales on her forehead fell to her knees as she spoke. Every person Linley selected decided to accept his trial, and so, Linley's little group was slowly beginning to grow. Book 21, The Peak, Chapter 31, A Meeting. Linley had already spent more than 500 years in establishing his divine plane of wind. Whoosh! A savage wind blew about wantonly, causing the entire area to be in a state of chaos. In this blurry, indistinct region, not even the skies or the land had yet to be fully formed. Deep within this blurry space, an indistinct figure could be seen, standing in the center, with rays of faint green light emanating towards every direction from his body, causing this blurry region to constantly expand and stabilize. Linley, his eyes shut, just stood there, his long, light green hair billowing about loosely. He had stood like this for 5 centuries now. Wind. Invisible. Formless. It can condense to be as sharp as a blade, but dissipate into nothingness. Within Linley's mind, multiple sword shadows were constantly flashing about, executing the various insights he had gained. An endless torrent of faith power flooded into Linley's consciousness like a river, causing his understanding of the wind to increase at a shocking rate. In particular, the process of establishing this divine plane of wind had caused Linley to gain many insights, and he had easily broken through many bottlenecks and resolved many difficult questions. In the past 500 years, Linley's level of understanding regarding the elemental laws of the wind had increased at an astonishing rate. This was because Linley had a solid foundation to begin with. In 500+ years, Linley had reached the level of fusing 5 profound mysteries of the elemental laws of the wind. But of course, the elemental laws of the wind had 9 profound mysteries. Linley could only be considered to have made some minor accomplishments. Ha ha. Suddenly, loud laughter rang out, echoing within this blurry space, causing it to tremble. After more than 500 years, I've finally, completely fused the dimensional attack profound mystery, and the profound mysteries of explosion. Now, the profound mysteries of explosion have already completely fused with the other 3 profound mysteries. Linley couldn't help but let a smile appear on his face. In almost an instant, Linley had begun to completely fuse all 4 profound mysteries into a whole, within his body. His understanding regarding the profundities of these 4 different mysteries began to slowly rise. So that's how it is. As he meditated, Linley's development of his most powerful attack, sword intent, began to change as well. Sword intent. Once the sword struck out, the invisible sword energy would strike out a bit too wantonly, unable to completely condense into a single point. But now that he was beginning to fuse all 4 of the profound mysteries, Linley was able to begin to slowly condense his strike into a single point. In the past, when Linley had yet to become a deity, as his understanding of the profound mysteries grew, his power had risen as well. Now, as his understanding of this fusion of the 4 profound mysteries grew, Linley's sword intent was beginning to rise in power as well. Another 4 or 5 centuries will be needed for this plane to be created. This is enough to allow me to rise in power once more. While establishing his divine plane of wind, Linley was training as well. Not just his wind-type sovereign clone, even his divine fire clone, his water-type sovereign clone, and his earth-type sovereign clone were completely focused on training as well. Linley was completely focusing on increasing his strength. The divine earth plane. Black Tortoise Continent. The Black Tortoise Continent was the continent which one of the 4 ancestors, the Black Tortoise, had controlled. Although the Black Tortoise had perished nearly 20,000 years ago, the Black Tortoise continent hadn't changed. Green grass could be seen everywhere, and a group of people was agilely advancing through it. The leader was a brown-haired youth, while behind him was 4 men and 2 women. This was Sovereign Linley's party. So that's how it is. While walking forward, a smile suddenly appeared on Linley's face. His right hand gestured twice slightly, and an blurred sword ripple shot out from his hands, causing space to instantly shatter. The sovereign is. Everyone, Russell and the rest of the 6 included, were all puzzled. Recently, over the course of their journey, Linley couldn't help but test out some techniques from time to time. This naturally caused the other 6 to feel surprised. However, they didn't dare disturb Linley. Boss, if you are going to train, just have your other clones train. Why must you? BB couldn't help but speak out. Linley, absorbed in the hidden profundities of his new technique, was startled awake. He let out an awkward laugh. BB, I couldn't help myself. Now, aside from his original body, the other 4 clones were completely absorbed in the process of fusing the 4 types of profound mysteries into a completely whole. Every single day, Linley gained some insights into the fusing of these 4 laws. The power of his sword intent technique was, day by day, beginning to slowly rise. Power that was increasing perceptibly, every single day. How terrifying was this? Boss, you really are a training fanatic. BB snorted. Then, however, he rubbed his nose and began to laugh. Still. Boss, don't be impatient. We've already acquired 5 emissaries. Only one is missing. The Black Tortoise continent has more than 1,000 7-star fiend level experts. And didn't you say, boss, that 2 of them are fairly close to us, just up ahead? Linley nodded. He turned to look at the 6 behind him. Of the 6, one was the commander of the Black Tortoise army, Wilhelm Walian, while the other 5 were his emissaries. Of the 5 emissaries, 3 were men while 2 were women, and they all had their own unique strengths. One was a ruler amongst the race of mermaids, a gold crest siren. One was a divine beast, 9-tailed wind ripper fox. Another was a female Viva Titan. In short, these 5 were either extremely strong in physical defense or extremely strong in spiritual defense. When given a sovereign artifact, their flaws were perfectly concealed. This was Linley's prerequisite for his selectees, that he would be able to give them enough power to have a chance to survive in the planar war. 500 years passed in the blink of an eye. Linley let out a sigh. There are 2 more up ahead. According to our intelligence reports, they are both 7-star god hunters. One is named Breathtaking, a virtuous, broad-minded fellow. The other, Ganslagangla SA, can be considered as being at the peak of power for 7-star god hunters. This intelligence had been provided to Linley by the commander of the Black Tortoise army, Wilhelm. Wilhelm, hand over that detailed report on them. Linley said calmly. Earlier, Linley had only reviewed a simplified version of the report, he hadn't read the detailed one. Bressel trains in the laws of light. He is very sincere and kind in his treatment of others, and he is willing to risk his life for his friends. Thus, he has quite a few good friends. Only, I find it strange, despite this sort of temperament, he was actually able to stay alive for so many years. This is inconceivable. Commander Wilhelm laughed. Linley couldn't help but nod as well. If the intelligence reports were correct, then this Bressel could be described as a perfect person. BB mumbled, for such a good-natured fellow to be able to stay alive in a place as murderous and violent as a divine plane, and even reach the 7-star fiend level of power, it really is inconceivable. Let's go. Those 2 are sparring yet again. Linley laughed calmly. Immediately, Linley's group advanced at a faster pace. A blurred shadow flashed, and it was as though they had disappeared into thin air. On the grassy earth, there was a building formed from elemental essence. Ahead of it, there was a gleaming, rippling lake. 2 figures were in the air above the lake, fighting and moving at high speed. Swish! An azure-robed figure, body crackling with lightning, was constantly moving about at a pace far greater than the other, white-robed figure. Still, the white-robed figure moved very quickly as well, only he wasn't able to catch up to his foe. His defense, however, was extremely strong. Humph! With a low growl, the white-robed figure's body suddenly expanded. His skin instantly turned azure, and his arms and legs increased in size. White runes appeared atop his body as well, and the blue veins on his body bulged out, snaking and twisting across his form, while 2 sharp horns emerged from his forehead. Bang! Bang! The azure-robed figure's attacks landed consecutively atop the body of the white-robed figure, but the leather-like skin of the white-robed figure was protected by that white light, and he borrowed from the force of the collision to retreat. The 2 can only be considered as being near the commander level. Linley watched the 2 distant figures flash about above the lake, and he laughed calmly as he came to his conclusion. Sovereign. Commander Wilhelm said respectfully, this Gansla is extremely fast, and his attacks can be considered extremely strong as well. He doesn't have any real weaknesses. But at the same time, he doesn't have any real, overwhelming strengths either. As for this Bresl, his uniqueness lies in his body and his defense. His defense is extremely strong, especially after transforming. Even experts at a higher level would generally find it hard to kill him. Look, although that Gansla, by relying on his speed, is able to land multiple blows on Bresl, and yet Bresl isn't affected at all. Linley nodded slightly. Although the white-robed Bresl had exceedingly strong defense, in this battle, Gansla clearly held the upper hand. Haha, my friend Gansla, let's stop here. The white-robed man laughed. If you were to unleash your most vicious technique, my soul defense wouldn't be able to withstand it. Bresl, your physical defense is simply too strong. The azure-robed man laughed as well. The white-robed man's figure began to slowly transform back to normal. His two horns on his forehead disappeared, and he changed back into a normal, human appearance. The power of my body is part of my innate gifts, but in terms of actual strength, I'm still weaker than you, my friend Gansla. The white-robed figure laughed. Suddenly, he frowned and stared into the distance, while the azure-robed figure by his side did the same. Linley's group was slowly strolling towards them from far away. Of Linley's group, only the commander of the Black Tortoise Army, Wilhelm, was a native of the Divine Earth Plane. Given his status, these two had never seen him before. But of course, although these two had no idea as to who the members of Linley's group were, they could sense that this group was not to be easily offended. Bresl, be careful. As I see it, they should all be quite strong. The azure-robed figure sent. It should be fine, Gansla. We didn't offend them, they wouldn't act against us for no reason. The white-robed figure chortled. Don't think that everyone is like you. The azure-robed Gansla was clearly readying himself, as he stared fixedly at Linley's advancing group. And then, Gansla barked in a cold voice, everyone, might I ask why you have come to my place? I want to have a chat with him in private. The leader of the group, a brown-haired figure, pointed at the white-robed Bresl as he spoke. My name is Bresl. Who might you be? Bresl laughed as he walked forward. Bresl. The nearby azure-robed Gansla immediately grew frantic, and he sent mentally, wanting to stop him. You don't even know them. Don't go near them. Linley glanced sideways at Gansla. With but a thought. Rumble, a surge of Earth-type sovereign power immediately spread out, filled with powerful sovereign's will. It instantly separated Gansla and Bresl, forming into a barrier that contained Bresl and Linley's group, with Gansla kept outside. The azure-robed Gansla was stunned by the Earth-type sovereign power. He couldn't help but be knocked flying backwards, but with a backflip, he immediately rose to his feet again. He stared at the group within the translucent, earthen yellow barrier, and his face changed dramatically. SOV, Sovereign. The power of Linley's simple technique was simply overwhelmingly terrifying. The white-robed Bresl, seeing the situation, immediately came to his senses as well. He hurriedly knelt down. Bresl pays his respects to the Sovereign. Dare I ask what you need from me, Sovereign? If there is anything you need, just instruct me. Bresl, I have a test for you. If you are willing to participate, you will become my emissary, and I will bestow upon you a sovereign artifact of your choosing. Linley laughed calmly. Ah! Bresl was stunned. To become a sovereign's emissary? To acquire a sovereign artifact? This was a stroke of fortune descending upon him from the heavens. Bresl felt dizzy for a moment. After training for countless years, who wouldn't seek to reach the pinnacle? Only, even someone at the domain lord level or the lord prefect level wouldn't necessarily be able to acquire a sovereign artifact. After all, there were only so many emissaries, while the number of commander-level experts was far more numerous. Me, a sovereign's emissary. Bresl couldn't help but repeat the words. Naturally. Linley nodded. The prerequisite, however, is for you to attend this trial. Dare I ask, Sovereign, what sort of a trial is this? Bresl was so excited that his face was starting to turn red. Linley let out a calm laugh. Don't be in a hurry to agree. First, listen closely to the details of this trial. I need you to participate in a planar war, but this planar war is different. Linley explained in detail exactly how dangerous this planar war would be. As he listened, the look in Bresl's eyes only grew even firmer. He felt that he had a chance at surviving, even within this terrifying planar war. Sovereign, I wish to acquire a soul-protecting sovereign artifact. Bresl said hurriedly. All done. 6 of them. Linley felt a surge of delight. Lord Linley. Right at this moment, a voice rang out in Linley's mind. Linley turned to look, only to see 2 figures flash towards him from far away, descending upon the ground. 2 sovereigns. Book 21, The Peak, Chapter 32, Gathering Point. Linley swept the 2 with his gaze, ascertaining their identities. Of the 2, one was dressed in a fiery long robe and had long, fiery red hair, with an amiable look on his face. This was a lesser sovereign of fire, Bort Botyr. As for the other, this man appeared rather muscular, and was comparable to Linley in height. He was dressed in a long, grey robe, and had tousled, short hair. This was the lesser sovereign of Earth, Manlu. Bort, Manlu. Linley laughed calmly. What a coincidence it is, to run into the 2 of you here. Why have you 2 come here? The 2 lesser sovereigns, Bort and Manlu, exchanged a glance, and then Bort smiled very modestly and said, Lord Linley. To tell the truth, Manlu and I have come to search for an emissary. This Bresl was one of the individuals we had decided on long ago. We came for the sake of letting him become our emissary. Lord Linley, please assist us in this. Not every sovereign had filled up every slot for their emissaries. For example, Bluefire only had a single emissary, Fusro. His second emissary had yet to be selected. Because of this upcoming planar war, the few sovereigns who had open emissary slots began to recruit and fill up their slot. Linley's face couldn't help but sink. Bort and Manlu couldn't help but tremble slightly in their hearts. Linley was, after all, someone who surpassed the Chief Sovereign of Lightning and Chief Sovereign of Light, a terrifying power. Only the 4 Chief Sovereigns of the Edicts surpassed Linley. The 2 of them, mere lesser sovereigns, how could they compare to Linley? Bort, I told you to forget it, but you? You insisted on coming. Manlu couldn't help but send. Don't worry. As long as we are respectful, Linley wouldn't dare act against us. If he does, he would be violating the pact. The lesser sovereign of fire, Bort, sent back. And then, he smiled towards Linley and said, Lord Linley, in the divine earth plane, there are many people aside from Bresl who have strong defense. You can easily choose another person. Linley swept a cold glance past Bort and Manlu. Before Linley had said anything, the nearby BB grew angry and barked, My boss has chosen an emissary. What makes you think you have the right to take him away? Shut your mouth. Manlu couldn't help but bark angrily as he gave BB a cold glance. The 2 feared Linley, but they didn't hold a mere high god like BB in any regard. In the eyes of a sovereign, a high god like BB was but an ant. And now, this ant actually dared to angrily lecture them. How could this be permitted? If it weren't for the fact that Linley was right there, the 2 probably would have killed BB right away. As I see it, it's the 2 of you who need to shut your mouths. Linley growled. Bort and Manlu's faces changed slightly. Lord Linley, how about, we let Bresl choose for himself? What do you say? Bort said shamelessly, and then, ignoring Linley's reaction, he turned to look towards Bresl. Smiling, he said, Bresl, if you are willing to become an emissary under my command, I can gift you a sovereign artifact. Bresl was completely puzzled. What is going on today? Why are sovereigns fighting over the chance to make me their emissary? Bresl was confused. Not just him, even Linley was puzzled. What is wrong with these two? Linley didn't understand. He's just an emissary. There are quite a few 7-star level experts in the divine earth plane. They can go find someone else. Why irritate me for the sake of this Bresl? What has caused them to act like this? Because of his puzzlement, Linley didn't immediately shoo off these two sovereigns. He wanted to figure out exactly what was going on with them. Bresl hesitated slightly. Becoming Linley's emissary involved an exceedingly dangerous trial. But this sovereign who had just appeared didn't mention any trial. Naturally, Bresl hesitated. Bored. Can it be that you aren't intending to send him into the planar battlefield? Linley said coldly. The sovereign of fire, bored, let out a casual laugh. If one wishes to become an emissary, one naturally must be tested. Bresl couldn't help but glance at the sovereign of fire, bored. He mused to himself, this sovereign of fire didn't mention this earlier. Most likely, he would only inform me about it after I agreed. His actions aren't very honorable. Not hesitating at all, Bresl said respectfully, apologies. I've already accepted the sovereign's offer. Linley laughed. Bort and Manlu exchanged a glance. I want to see what else these two have to say for themselves. Linley was now truly interested. What caused these two to insist on fight with Linley over Bresl, to the point of even offending him? Just for an emissary? Linley didn't believe it. They shouldn't be willing to offend a powerful chief sovereign level expert, even if it meant losing out on an emissary. Were these sovereigns fools? Was something wrong with their heads? That wasn't likely either. Then, what was the real reason? Lord Linley. Bort bowed slightly, then sent, it was Lord Orloff, the chief sovereign of fate, who ordered us to make this Bresl our emissary. The two of us are simply following orders. There was nothing we could do. Please help us out a bit, Lord Linley. Linley was stunned. The chief sovereign of fate, Orloff. Linley knew that each of the 4 chief sovereigns of the edicts had a group of sovereigns under their control. For example, the chief sovereign of destruction had quite a few sovereigns he protected, many of whom trained in the elemental laws, who had entered the infernal realm and stood on his side. The sovereigns all knew, after all, that the 4 chief sovereigns of the edicts were the most powerful, and thus they naturally knew it was necessary to follow one of them. The chief sovereign of fate was unfathomably powerful, and so there were quite a few sovereigns who obeyed his orders. The 2 sovereigns before Linley were amongst them. In fact, even the chief sovereign of light, Augusta, could be considered someone on the side of the chief sovereign of fate, although he couldn't be said to be completely subordinate to him. Haha, Lord Orloff already has his army of 12 winged angels. Why would he care about an emissary or 2? Linley sent back with a calm laugh. We aren't able to comprehend Lord Orloff's plans. Bort and Manlu were both very respectful. Bort sent back, Lord Orloff gave us the order to come here and have someone called Bresl become his emissary. Although Lord Orloff didn't tell us that we absolutely had to accomplish this mission, we can't disappoint him, right? Thus, we would like to ask you, Lord Linley, to help out. Linley now began to understand. However, there was still one thing he was puzzled on. Orloff is the chief sovereign of fate. He is such a high, lofty figure that even the chief sovereign of destruction isn't able to do anything to him. Why, then, would he remember a mere high god, Bresl? Lord Linley, Bort said again. Apologies. I've already accepted this Bresl as my emissary. This is akin to giving Bresl a promise. As a sovereign, once I've given my word, How can I simply take it back? Linley gave the two a calm glance. The two of you had best leave and depart. Bort and Manlu couldn't help but frown slightly. Lord Linley, this is someone the chief sovereign of fate, Lord Orloff, chose personally. If you do this, once Lord Orloff knows, Bort said fearlessly. Linley's face sank. Threats. His gaze turned icy cold. He looked at the two. And he only said two words, F***ck off. Bort and Manlu's faces changes dramatically. No longer daring to say a word, they bowed slightly, then immediately flew away, fleeing at high speed. To use the chief sovereign of fate, Orloff, to threaten me. Linley shook his head mentally. These two sovereigns were trying to bluff him with threats. Linley knew what type of person Orloff was. He wasn't the sort to avenge every enmity. Sometimes, a superior might be a very good person, but because of the frivolous actions of his subordinates, have his own reputation tarnished. There was indeed a great difference between lesser sovereigns and chief sovereigns. Only, because of the pact of sovereigns, unless there was a grievance between them, the chief sovereigns were not to attack lesser sovereigns. Bort and Manlu had already flown very far away. Linley is too wild and arrogant. Bort couldn't help but send. We even lowered ourselves to beg him for help, and even told him that this was for the chief sovereign of fate. He actually still refuses to give any face at all. Bort, today, you went a bit too far as well. Linley is at the chief sovereign level, after all. Manlu sent back. Bort snickered as he sent back, chief sovereign level? He's just a punk who got tremendously lucky, and somehow in less than 10,000 years, reached that level. That's only because he fused 3 sovereign sparks and has an Overgod weapon. And, Manlu, you don't need to be afraid of him. As long as we don't make a huge mistake, would he dare act against us? Bort had a bad impression of Linley. Linley had suddenly risen to prominence. First, as a lesser sovereign, he had fought the chief sovereign of wind, Dia, to a standstill. And then, he had actually destroyed a sovereign clone of the chief sovereign of lightning, then heavily injured the chief sovereign of light. Linley's rise to prominence was simply too fast. Naturally, this would arouse the jealousy of quite a few sovereigns. Bort was one of them. Enough of that. You would only dare to imagine offending him, but would you dare to actually do it? Manlu couldn't help but laugh and ask him this question. Bort cringed. Would he dare? Absolutely not. Let's go back to the celestial realm. Unfortunately, we weren't able to fulfill Lord Orloff's commands. Manlu said helplessly. However, Lord Orloff didn't make it a forceful imperative. It isn't a big deal for us to fail to accomplish the order. After the two sovereigns left, Linley looked towards Bresl, then laughed calmly. Since you asked it of me, I shall bestow upon you a soul-protecting sovereign artifact. From today onwards, you will become the 6th emissary under my control. Linley waved his hand, and a soul-protecting sovereign artifact, in the form of a ring, appeared. Thank you, sovereign. Bresl fell to his knees, excited, as he accepted the sovereign artifact. Linley glanced at Bresl, then at his other 5 emissaries. Laughing, he said, from today onwards, the 6 of you will remain together. Train well and learn to coordinate with each other. If the 6 of you join forces within the planar battlefield, as long as you are cautious, you still have a good chance of surviving. Yes, sovereign. The 6 bowed. Although some of you have 1 or 2 drops of sovereign's might, that isn't going to be nearly enough in the planar war. Linley waved his hand, and 6 small black jade flasks appeared. Within these 6 flasks were large amounts of sovereign's might. 2 were water-type sovereign's might, 1 was earth-type sovereign's might, 1 was wind-type sovereign's might, 1 was light-type sovereign's might, while the final one was darkness-type sovereign's might. As a sovereign, it was naturally quite easy for Linley to collect the sovereign's might. These bottles each contain 100 drops of sovereigns. More than enough for you to use within the planar wars. Linley willed the 6 jade flasks to fly towards the 6 people. The 6 accepted the bottles, utterly delighted. "Thank you, sovereign." The 6 all knelt down in gratitude. "All right. Arise, all of you." Linley swept the 6 with his gaze. He knew that after the 6 entered the planar battlefield, they wouldn't be able to leave. How many would survive this upcoming planar war? Remember, in this planar war, you absolutely must not try to push yourself too far. Learn to hide, to endure. Staying alive is the most important thing, killing the enemies is secondary. Yes, sovereign. The 6 emissaries couldn't help but feel a hint of gratitude. Prepare to head out. Linley turned to stare into the distance. 5 centuries. In less than 100 years, the planar wars will begin. BB stretched lazily. "Ah. Whew. Finally going back." Linley smiled slightly. "Right at this moment." "Sovereign, can we wait a moment?" The 6th emissary, Bresl, bowed rather awkwardly. "What is it?" Linley looked at him. Linley was rather curious about this Bresl. He was a seemingly ordinary 7-star fiend level expert. What made it so that the chief sovereign of fate, Orloff, would remember him? Bresl said hurriedly, "My divine darkness clone is somewhere else. You are of the infernal realm, sovereign. If I can survive the planar war, in the future, I naturally will want to remain in the infernal realm. Thus, my divine darkness clone is also preparing to head to the infernal realm." Divine darkness clone. Linley was rather puzzled. It was quite rare for someone to simultaneously train in both the laws of light and the laws of darkness. Olivier was one such person, while Bresl was another. Book 21, The Peak, Chapter 33, The Beulah Race. "Bresl, you have a divine darkness clone as well." The Black Tortoise Army's commander, Wilhelm, said in surprise. Linley laughed calmly as he glanced at Wilhelm, then said, "Wilhelm, as the commander of the Black Tortoise Army, you haven't been collecting sufficiently accurate intelligence. You didn't even know that Bresl had a divine darkness clone." "Sovereign, your subordinate was remiss." Wilhelm hurriedly bowed. Bresl bowed as well. "Sovereign, aside from everyone present, there are less than 5 people who know about my divine darkness clone, which is indeed a secret. Since I have become your emissary, I naturally won't hold this secret back from you." Linley nodded while smiling. "How far away is your divine clone? How long will he need to fly here?" "Not too far away. 10 days or so." Bresl said. "Hey, kid, that's quite easy for you to say. Just 10 days? That means we have to wait 10 days for you." BB suddenly stared. "But," Bresl laughed awkwardly, then glanced at Linley. "I need 10 days. But if the sovereign is willing to assist, a moment is all that's needed." Bresl didn't know much about sovereigns, but he knew that they traveled at astonishing speed. Linley shook his head and laughed. "Let's head out. Bresl, you guide the way towards your divine clone." "Yes, sovereign. My divine clone is towards the northeast." Bresl hurriedly pointed towards that direction, while turning to glance at the distant azure-robed man, his good friend, Gansla. He immediately sent through divine sense, "Gansla, my friend, I am going to accompany the sovereign and depart now. In the future, we will have the chance to meet again." "Bresl, congratulations." The distant Gansla, staring at Linley's group, felt delighted for his friend's fortune. "Let's go." Linley laughed and spoke out. As he spoke, he sent out a surge of Earth-type sovereign power, which wrapped around everyone present. Whoosh! They transformed into an earthen yellow flash of light which disappeared into the horizons. Gansler raised his head, watching the light disappear, then sighed. Before this, Bresl was in the middle of a duel with me. Who would have imagined that in the blink of an eye, he would become a sovereign's emissary? He glanced at the surrounding grasslands, then a smile appeared on his face. Fortunately, a few days ago, Bresl managed to finish this magic formation. In recent days, Bresl had been staying with Gansler, primarily to help Gansler set up a magic formation. The profound mysteries of formations differed from the 7 elemental laws and the 4 edicts. They were extremely special. The analysis of formations required sufficient patience, as well as talent in that field. It had extremely high requirements, in terms of both innate talent as well as analytical ability. In the 4 higher realms and the 7 divine planes, formation masters had exalted statuses. For example, when Linley had entered the infernal realm and participated in a fiend trial, he had entered a castle that was protected by a large, powerful formation. Only, the Deo of formations was not the true Deo. There was no way in which one could increase one's own strength through them. After today, there shouldn't be many who will come make trouble for me. Gansler smiled as he activated the formation. Rumble. In a circumference of nearly 10 kilometers, a blurry light suddenly lit up, then vanished. Instantly, the scenery within this region completely changed, the lake and the building both disappeared, transforming into ordinary grass. Clearly, this was an extremely powerful illusory magical formation. Linley had no idea that he had just accepted a formations master as his emissary. The world was vast and empty. Linley's group continued to fly through the air at high speed. Linley frowned as he glanced at Bresl, then said, "Bresl, where exactly is your divine clone?" "Up ahead. We are almost there," Bresl said. Right here, Sovereign. You can halt," Bresl suddenly said. Linley frowned as he halted. This place was nearly 100 million kilometers away from the earlier grasslands, but a distance of 100 million kilometers, to Linley, could be traversed in the time it took to say a few words. "Are you certain?" "Right here." Linley couldn't help but look at him. "Right. My divine clone is right here." Bresl laughed as he looked into the distance. Linley looked towards that direction as well. In the distance, he saw a series of metallic life form flying about, as well as a few people moving about by their own. What surprised Linley was, he wasn't able to locate a person in the surrounding area who had the same aura as Bresl did. "He's here." Bresl laughed. Indeed. A figure advanced towards them, flying at high speed. This person was dressed in a long, black robe, and was comparable to Bresl in height. Only, an occasional, fiendish light flashed through his eyes. After drawing close, this person immediately bowed respectfully. "The darkness Bresl pays his respects to you, Sovereign." Silence. The other emissaries. Army Commander Wilhelm. Bibi. Even Linley. They were all stunned. They are the same person. Linley stared at the two in disbelief. The white-robed Bresl smiled in a very friendly manner, making others feel friendly towards him. This black-robed Bresl, however, gave off a vile, evil feeling. More importantly, the soul auras of the two were completely different. Logically speaking, upon becoming a deity, a person's soul would be split, but each soul would be the same. Memories, emotions, feelings, they would all be the same. In principle, different divine clones should have the same aura and thoughts, right? Sovereign, the two of us truly are the same person. The white-robed Bresl said respectfully. To be more precise, countless years ago, we were one person. The black-robed Bresl gave the white-robed Bresl a glance. Bibi looked at the two Bresls, then turned to stare at Linley. He sent mentally, "Boss, what's going on? The two of them are one person." "Bresl, the two of you, Linley swept the two with his glance. Truly are the same person? How can you prove it? The white-robed Bresl looked at the black-robed Bresl, then said, the two of us can merge into one. I really don't want to merge bodies with you. The black-robed Bresl muttered. And then, the white-robed Bresl and the black-robed Bresl moved towards each other, and their bodies merged into one, resulting in a single person. Bresl. They really are a single person. Linley was completely stunned. Only a single person would be able to merge bodies like this. The strange thing was, after the two merged into one, the soul of the fused person had a different aura. Compared to the pureness and gentleness of the white-robed Bresl soul aura, as well as the savagery of the black-robed Bresl soul aura, it was completely different. It was a mix, and yet, strangely, it was one. Can you tell me what this is all about? Linley looked at this Bresl, puzzled. Bresl looked at the surrounding people, then bowed and said, Sovereign, Bresl, imagine that you can tell that I am not of an ordinary race. Linley nodded. His body was so powerful that he could receive blows from 7-star fiend-level experts head-on. How could an ordinary person withstand such blows? In addition, after transforming, the flesh on Bresl's body would dramatically swell, and be covered with azure skin and complicated white runes. It actually looked rather like the skin of a serpent. And of course, 2 horns would emerge from his forehead. All of this represented that Bresl was not a member of an ordinary race. I am a member of the ancient Beulah race. Bresl said respectfully. Beulah race. Linley frowned. Yes, Sovereign. Bresl said respectfully. The innate gifts of our Beulah race are no weaker than a divine beast's. Linley knew that the world contained many marvelous creatures, some of which had their own innate divine abilities. For example, the Amethyst Mountains had given birth to the Redbud Sovereign. And the Nether Sea had given birth to the very first plant-based life form, the Chief Sovereign of Death. The Infernal Realm's very first creature, the Chief Sovereign of Destruction, they all were unique creatures. There were many creatures such as them, and generally speaking, each material plane would also give birth to 1 or 2 divine beasts or unique creatures as well. The Yulon plane, for example, had given birth to the god Ader Rat. The other planes had quite a few as well. Only, everyone was different. Although some had incredible innate gifts, their accomplishments were still meager. Although our Beulah race is powerful, we don't have any innate divine abilities. Bresl said. No innate divine abilities. BB couldn't help but ask, puzzled. The more powerful a race was, the more likely it should be that they would have an innate divine ability. The heavens are fair. We don't have any innate divine abilities, but we have an innate gift from birth. Bresl laughed. Every single person of the Beulah race, from their earliest memories, are aware of a very special technique, the technique to allow their souls to transform, and then for them to become 2 people. Transform. Linley frowned. Right, transform. Bresl nodded. Any intelligent life form will have personality flaws and weaknesses. For example, I like to research magic formations, and wanted to let myself be completely absorbed in analyzing them. But in my heart, I also hold desires and interests in other things, such as women, power, and more. These things will make it so that I am unable to calm myself down and focus on analyzing magic formations. Linley nodded. This was much like how he himself was unable to completely focus on training without pause. Generally speaking, of Linley's 5 divine clones, only 4 would train at once, with 1 being in a state of rest. We Beulahs are able to allow our personalities, bodies, and thoughts be completely separated into 2. We put what we want in one, while we can discard the greed and vileness in our hearts into the other. Afterwards, we can allow our souls to transform and divide into 2 souls. And so, we will have divided into 2 people. Bresl laughed. For example, me. One of my bodies is calm and kind, I can completely focus on analyzing magic formations. But my other soul is filled with all sorts of venal desires, it can go kill, fight, and plunder. The two souls don't want to disturb each other. Bresl laughed. And because each go to the extreme in their respective ways, I naturally will make great progress. Linley, hearing this, was completely stunned. This was a single person who, in many ways, had become two persons. There was a saying that in the heart of every single person, there was a demon. Even the most noble, exalted of individuals would have, deep in their hearts, a brutal streak, only, those people had extremely powerful self-control and wouldn't let it escape. But this Beulah race, they were actually able to completely separate that brutality. A person's soul is very complicated. When a creature is born, they will naturally gain a soul, and as they gain experiences, their thoughts and soul will naturally change as well. Thus, their soul aura will also change minutely. Bresl laughed calmly. But of course, the change won't be too extravagant. After all, when a person is born, their soul aura has essentially been set. Linley nodded. He understood this principle. When he was young, he was a bit different compared to how he was right now. Although others could still recognize Linley at one glance, they would also be able to tell that he had changed. After becoming a deity, the soul is divided into two. That, however, is just a splitting of the soul, the mind and the aura doesn't change. Or, more precisely speaking, it's still exactly the same person, and so the thoughts are completely the same. Bresl laughed. But we of the Beulah race are different. Our two bodies have different thoughts, different souls, different personalities. We go to two different extremes. Naturally, our soul auras will also change. As he spoke, Bresl once more transformed, dividing into two individuals once more, the white-robed Bresl and the black-robed Bresl. When we are together, we will even get into fights because of our different attitudes and different methods of action. The white-robed Bresl laughed as he looked at Linley. Sovereign, can you imagine it? Bizarre. Inconceivable. Linley sighed in amazement. The natural world truly was a bizarre place. Even these sorts of races could be created by the natural world. Although they didn't have innate divine abilities, they had been bestowed with this unique racial gift. How many members are there of your Beulah race? Linley couldn't help but ask. Very, very few. The white-robed Bresl shook his head. In all these years, I've only encountered 3. When we Beulahs meet each other, we can easily recognize each other. So few. BB chortled. Then if you want to find a Beulah female and have a child, wouldn't that be very difficult? The white-robed Bresl was startled, but then he laughed and shook his head. In truth, our Beulah race doesn't have men or women, we decide which appearance we wish to take. The process of giving birth, for our Beulah race, is actually quite simple. We sacrifice ourselves and use up our life energy to vomit out an egg. Soon after vomiting the egg out, we will perish. The child, in turn, will break through the egg and emerge, descending upon the world. For one to be born, one must die. Linley and BB exchanged glances. They couldn't help but sigh. This race truly was unique. Book 21, The Peak, Chapter 34, Samsara. For one to be born, one must die. Then how was the first Beulah born? BB blinked. Hearing this, Linley couldn't help but laugh. BB, tell me, how was the first God-Eater rat born? Linley said. BB was speechless. We Beulahs, along with many other unique races, are all birthed by the heavens. Bresl laughed. For example, I was born in the Nala material plane, but the 3 members of my race that I met were all born from other planes. Although I know that I can sacrifice myself to give birth to a child, for now, I don't have that desire. Linley understood. This was the rule of the universe: more powerful a race was, the fewer in number they would be. For example, the azure dragon, white tiger, and the other two of the four divine beasts. For example, the abyssal fruit tree, the chief sovereign of death, and the chief sovereign of destruction. Those were most likely all unique. Although this Beulah race had a very unique ability, they weren't comparable to god Ader rats or abyssal fruit trees, and so there were quite a few of them by comparison. For example, over the course of the years, Linley alone had encountered, through using divine sense, more than 100 members of the divine beast race, Suani lion. Divine beasts were divided into classes as well, after all. Haha. I didn't expect that this time. I had accepted a Beulah as my emissary. Linley laughed. And a Grand Master in magic formations, at that. Excellent. Let's head out. Linley released his sovereign power, bringing the group alongside him as he transformed into a ray of earthen yellow light that flew at high speed towards the nearest teleportation array. While Linley's group hastened towards the infernal realm, Bort and Manlu, the two lesser sovereigns, returned to the celestial realm. The one and only building that hovered in the air in the celestial realm, the Orloff Gardens. This levitating garden was the residence to one of the two most powerful of the four chief sovereigns of the edicts, the chief sovereign of fate, Orloff. Within the quiet gardens, Orloff was seated in the meditative position atop the grass, his long, white beard past his chest. Lord Orloff. Bort and Manlu bowed as they arrived. Oh, you returned. Orloff smiled. Bort and Manlu couldn't help but feel comfortable. As they saw it, choosing to subordinate themselves to the chief sovereign of fate, Orloff, had been a wise decision. The chief sovereign of fate, Orloff, was extremely powerful. In addition, he treated others very well. Given how icy and cold the chief sovereign of destruction was, submitting to him would have been extremely unpleasant. But the chief sovereign of fate? He always greeted them with a smile. Of course they would feel comfortable, and also feel all the more loyal to the chief sovereign of fate. Lord Orloff, you asked us to take on that man, Bresl, as an emissary. But by the time we located and identified Bresl, he was actually with Linley. Bort said helplessly. We asked him to give up Bresl to us, but Linley refused. We even mentioned your name, Lord Orloff, but he didn't care at all. He even barked at us. The chief sovereign of fate, Orloff, upon hearing this, simply laughed. Forget it. This Linley is a chief sovereign level expert, after all. It isn't strange that he has a bit of an attitude. All right. Bort and Manlu both bowed. All right. In roughly a century, the planar war will begin. The chief sovereign of fate, Orloff, rose to his feet, then stared into the distance. I have to pay a visit to the divine light plane as well. The infernal realm. Blood Ridge continent. Within the borders of the Indigo Prefecture. Whoosh. A ray of earthen yellow light flashed past the skies, descending into the Skirite Mountains. The ray of light moved so quickly that even many of the High God clansmen weren't able to notice it. The Skirite Mountains. Linley's estate. Linley's group suddenly appeared out of nowhere within the empty, grassy field within the estate. Elder Linley. The maids and guards, upon seeing Linley, were badly startled. They all hurriedly saluted or curtsied. Haha, Linley, you were gone for quite long, this time. A voice rang out. Beirut and Blue Fire emerged at the same time. Beirut swept Linley and Bibi with his gaze, along with the seven behind them. The seven were the five emissaries, and the black-robed and white-robed Bresls. As for the commander of the army, Wilhelm, upon Linley's group arriving at the teleportation array, Wilhelm had elected to stay behind with the teleportation array guards instead of accompanying them. These are the emissaries you found. Beirut laughed. Right. Linley laughed and nodded. But of course, Finding emissaries didn't take up too much time. The main thing was, BB and I took a nice tour of those 3 divine planes. The nearby blue fire couldn't resist saying, "You seem to be quite at ease." "Right. Those clones you left behind in the estate, why are they all absorbed in training? I wanted to speak with you, but didn't find any chance to." Linley could only chuckle. Indeed, of his 5 major clones, only his original body was relaxed and at ease. The other 3 sovereign clones, as well as his divine fire clone, were all training. "You can stay here for now." Linley glanced at the emissaries behind him, and then looked towards a distant maid. "Make the arrangements for them to have places to stay." "Yes, Elder," the maid said respectfully. The 6 emissaries thus followed the maid away to settle down here. Linley and the other 2 sat down around a table. The 3 began to drink and chat. "Oh, from what you are saying, in the past 5 centuries, you've improved quite a bit," Beirut said, surprised. Linley nodded. "My power is roughly 3 times as great as it previously was." 3 times. Beirut and Blue Fire couldn't help but feel stunned. In truth, ever since he had begun to completely merge the 4 laws, Linley's sword intent had begun to increase in power as well. The difference between the fusion of 3 profound mysteries of different laws and 4 profound mysteries of different laws was nearly 100-fold. For Linley to have only improved his power 3-fold wasn't much. But to a chief sovereign level expert, a 3-fold increase in power was truly terrifying. "Haha, excellent." Beirut couldn't help but slap his hands on the table and sigh, "It seems the days of the chief sovereign of light are numbered." "Right." Linley nodded. "The next planar war is less than 100 years from now. During this period of time, the forces that will send people in to do battle will begin to gather. Augusta most likely coordinate with the chief sovereign of fate, Orloff, as he did before. This isn't the time to attack yet. In addition, my power is still, slowly rising. I'll wait for now. This is the right time to wait, and what's more, I'm quite confident." Beirut and Blue Fire couldn't help but laugh. Linley had never given up the goal of killing Augusta. The hatred between Augusta and Linley stemmed from multiple causes. Last time, Linley had compromised for the sake of his mother's life. He had no other choice. Augusta himself knew that Linley was just biding his time and tempering his rage for now. But as Augusta saw it, since Linley was a paragon already, he had no further potential for growth. Linley wasn't someone for him to fear. In fact, Augusta seized the opportunity to give Linley a good fleecing during their negotiations. Time flowed on, and in the blink of an eye, decades passed. The 6 emissaries under Linley's control were in no rush to head to the planar battlefield. They remained within the Skirite Mountains. The Skirite Mountains. Linley's estate. In an empty area, the black-robed Bresl and the other 5 emissaries were organized into a hexagonal star formation. A very unusual surge of divine power was constantly circulating through them. The black-robed Bresl and the rest of the 6 were constantly moving about at high speed, flashing hither and to. Sometimes going into the air, sometimes going into the distance, and sometimes landing back down. In addition, they often launched attacks towards the air, causing one spatial rift after another to appear. "Everyone, halt!" The white-robed Bresl barked with a frown. Instantly, all 6 landed onto the ground. "What is it, Bresl?" The 4 men and 2 women looked at the white-robed Bresl. "It's wrong. The way the formation currently works, consumes too much energy. More than half the energy is wasted." Bresl couldn't help but shake his head. "It's already quite excellent," the beautiful lady with fish scales on her forehead said with a laugh. "When the 6 of us join together, our attack power and defense power all increase dramatically. In addition, those of us with stronger defenses can help those with weaker defenses take on some more of the burden. When we attack together, We are comparable to 18 emissaries fighting separately. Sometimes, joining forces was a good thing. Sometimes, it was a bad thing. During planar wars, for 6 emissaries to be gathered in one place was giving the enemy a chance to annihilate them all in one massive attack. However, if those 6 emissaries were able to work within a magical formation that allowed their strengths and defenses to join together, then the situation would naturally be different. No. Too much energy is being wasted in the activation of this formation. This is completely different from the samsara formation that I envisioned. The white-robed Bresl shook his head. Right at this moment. Samsara formation. A voice rang out. Linley and Delia were walking together towards their direction. Sovereign. Everyone bowed. Linley laughed as he looked at the white-robed Bresl. Bresl, your accomplishments in the art of formations is quite impressive. In recent days, I've been watching you 6 constantly test out this formation. I have the feeling that the 6 of you will be becoming marvels to behold at the planar battlefield. When a sovereign's emissaries did well, the sovereign would gain face as well. Sovereign, this is still quite different from what I had envisioned. The white-robed Bresl shook his head. Long ago, I spent nearly 100 million years to develop this samsara formation for the sake of allowing myself and black robes to join together and release even greater power. This 6-man formation is something which I devised based on an extrapolation and expansion of the original samsara formation. But this formation, 6 people joining together, is much more difficult. Linley nodded. To develop a powerful and perfect battle formation was extremely difficult. To develop one in just a few thousand years? It was impossible. Bresl had spent nearly 100 million years on the original samsara formation. Now, since this new one was based on the same principles, developing it was much faster. Despite that, however, hundreds of years would still be needed. Delia, by Linley's side, said with a laugh, as I see it, when the time comes, the 6 of you should use the same type of sovereign's might. That way, when activating the formation, you will waste much less power. That is what we were planning as well. The white-robed Bresl said respectfully. But this battle formation clearly is not yet perfect. Still, Sovereign, we only have a few decades before the planar war starts. We aren't going to be able to make it in time. I think. Don't be impatient. Linley laughed calmly. The planar war will go on for 1,000 years. The first part of the 1,000 years consists of people hunting and killing each other. Only the final few moments of those 1,000 years culminate with the final battle. You only need to enter before the final battle, and so, you still have 1,000 years. When the time comes, I will personally send you all to the planar battlefield. Traveling from the Skirite Mountains to the Infernal Realms dimensional gateway leading to the planar battlefield would take up a tremendous amount of time. But for a sovereign, less than half a day would be needed. Thank you, Sovereign. These people were all overjoyed. The more they perfected this formation, the more powerful their defenses and attacks would be. Thus, the greater their chances for survival would be. You can continue. I won't disturb you. Linley laughed as he led Delia away. Silently, soundless, another 10 years passed. The Infernal Realm. Deep within the chaotic sea. Rumble. A long dragon formed from a long, winding line of human bodies could be seen, as a steady stream of people flooded towards a distant black castle. Thousands and thousands of experts of the Infernal Realm poured into the Black Castle. The Black Castle wasn't that large, but this torrent of visitors had already been going on for quite some time. 2 people were located before a window within this Black Castle. They stood shoulder to shoulder. It was Linley and Boson. There really are quite a few attendees this time. Linley couldn't help but say in surprise. There are many participants this time. Although this is a battle between the Celestial Realm and the Infernal Realm, many experts from the other planes, such as the Netherworld and the Life Realm, have come to join our side. The blood-rich sovereign, Boson, was by Linley's side, and he sighed as he spoke. In terms of quantity of soldiers, we far surpass the celestial realm. But in terms of quality, we are greatly inferior. Linley laughed calmly. The chief sovereign of destruction and the others have gone all out. It will be hard for the celestial realm to win this battle. Right, Linley, where are your 6 emissaries? The blood-rich sovereign suddenly said. What's the rush? Isn't it enough for them to join together with the army before the final battle? Linley replied with a laugh. As you choose, then. The blood-rich sovereign looked below at the constant, never-ending flow of people. He couldn't help but let out a sigh. The planar war has begun. A large number of people will die yet again. Linley nodded slightly as well. The 1,000-year planar war had begun. Book 21, The Peak, Chapter 35, 1,000 Years. The planar war had begun. But the sovereigns didn't pay much attention for now. This was because the results of the war were determined solely by the final battle. Sovereigns had unlimited lifespans. Thousands of years passed in but the blink of an eye. Quite a few sovereigns had already begun discussing who was more likely to win or lose this planar war. As for the youngest sovereign, Linley, he was going through a period of explosive growth in strength. At the borders of the Yulon Plain, there was an enormous divine plane being birthed. Within this plane, whoosh, a wild wind blew. Some mountain rocks were shattered into tiny pieces by this wild wind. This newly born plane was filled with dense amounts of divine power and elemental essences which solidified into unyielding rocks that couldn't be shattered by the wind. Tall, cloud-piercing mountains. Vast, endless plains. The extremely dense elemental essences drifted about, and amongst them, a tall, muscular figure could be seen standing. With a gesture from a single finger, a dazzling green sun suddenly formed out of nowhere, hanging high in the sky. After spending 1,100 years, this divine plane of wind has finally been completed. The green-haired Linley revealed a hint of a smile on his face. The past 1,100 years of training had caused Linley to advance to the level of fusing 6 of the profound mysteries of the elemental laws of the wind. However, the elemental laws of the wind had a total of 9 profound mysteries. Fusing 6 profound mysteries of the elemental laws of the wind was comparable to fusing 4 profound mysteries of the laws of the earth. There are more than 500 years before the final battle of this planar war. No need for me to be in a rush. The light green-haired Linley once more shut his eyes, continuing to train. He was currently advancing at a breakneck pace in merging the profound mysteries of the 4 different laws. Linley naturally didn't want to halt now. 765 years after the planar war had started. The infernal realm. The Skirite Mountains. A blurry light was flickering about in the air above the Skirite Mountains. One spatial tier after another constantly appeared in the skies. Moments later, the blurry ray of light once more descended towards Linley's estate in the Skirite Mountains. The light vanished, revealing 6 figures. It was the black-robed Bresl and the other 5 emissaries. The white-robed Bresl, watching from below, finally smiled. Ha ha, success. Quite perfect. We waste less than 10% of the energy. The long, flaxen-haired female Viva Titan sighed in amazement. The divine beast, 9-tailed Wind Ripper Fox, Russell, nodded as well. When the 6 of us join forces, even 30 commander-level experts probably wouldn't be a match for us, if they weren't unified. 6 experts who had sovereign artifacts and were able to perfectly join forces, the power they could unleash was truly terrifying. Fortunately, we have 2 water attribute and 2 darkness attribute members. The white-robed Bresl chortled. Water is extremely flexible and accommodating, while darkness is something I understand quite well. This is why we were successful. Right at this moment, Linley appeared, as though by teleportation, in front of the 7. Sovereign. Upon seeing him, they all hurriedly bowed and saluted. Linley's gaze swept past his emissaries, a surge of joy in his heart. His greatest success in choosing emissaries was his selection of this Bresl, a formations master. With this Samsara formation operational, I now have a bit of confidence regarding your performance during this planar war. Linley laughed calmly. However, don't be too smug. Even paragons, in that sort of environment, would have a 50% chance of death. The 6 of you need to be careful. Yes, Sovereign. The emissaries all bowed. They all understood that this would be very dangerous. Even with the Samsara formation, they would just have a somewhat higher chance for survival, they were far from being able to dominate the battlefield. Since you've already essentially completed your cooperative training, today, I will send you to the planar battlefield. Linley said calmly. Bresl, will your divine light clone remain here or go with them? In terms of combat ability, I am a bit weaker than my divine darkness clone. The white-robed Bresl laughed. And this battle formation is predicated on having 2 experts of darkness and 2 experts of water, along with 1 expert of earth and 1 of wind. It is this combination of 6 experts which makes it work. Linley nodded slightly. The white-robed Bresl and the black-robed Bresl had different thoughts and mentalities, but in the end, they were still the same person. The soul-protecting sovereign artifact which Linley had bestowed the white-robed Bresl could also be used by the black-robed one. Linley delivered the 6 emissaries under his control to the planar battlefield, then returned to the Skirite Mountains. 893 years after the planar war had started. Whoosh! A figure moved forward at an extremely terrifying speed, instantly arcing out to a distance of 10 million kilometers and landing within the Skirite Mountains. Linley, who was quietly seated by himself within his courtyard, suddenly raised his head. The figure that descended from the heavens shot directly into Linley's body, merging into it. Finally, all my clones are in one place. Linley revealed a hint of a smile. Linley, Beirut and Blue Fire, at almost the same instant, arrived as well. Beirut said, delighted, your Wind Sovereign clone returned. Does this mean that you have essentially completed your 4-way fusion of the laws? Previously, after Linley completed his establishment of his divine plane of wind, he had continued to train. If he hadn't succeeded in his training, why would he have returned? Essentially. Linley laughed calmly and nodded. I've already reached the final bottleneck in fusing the 4 laws. With one final step, I will have completely, perfectly fused the 4 profound mysteries of the 4 laws into a whole. However, taking this step is even harder than reaching the level of Paragon. Linley let out a sigh. Beirut and Blue Fire both understood. How hard was it to become a Paragon? Because Linley had 3 sovereign clones, his rate of advancement was astonishing, which was why he was able to constantly advance until reaching the final bottleneck. However, to break through the bottleneck had nothing to do with analytical ability. There were many sovereigns who were at the final bottleneck before becoming a paragon, but after trillions of years, they still had yet to make that breakthrough. As for Linley, who knew if Linley would be able to break through this final bottleneck? This 4-way law fusion was, after all, 10 times more powerful than becoming a paragon in a law. Naturally, the difficulty was greater as well. I'm at a bottleneck, but my power is still nearly 10 times stronger than it was during my last fight against Augusta. Linley said with a smile. 10 times. Blue Fire and Beirut were both overjoyed. Humph, Augusta, that bastard. Beirut couldn't refrain from starting to laugh. Last time, he was lucky enough to survive. But now, Linley, you have grown 10 times more powerful. Haha, Augusta's only chance is to reach the paragon level. But the chances of that are far too slim. Augusta hadn't been able to break through despite countless years having passed. Actually, this all but guaranteed that Augusta had no hope of becoming a paragon. Killing Augusta isn't just our dream. It is also the dream of the four divine beasts clan. Beirut laughed as he looked at Linley. Beirut, don't be impatient. The nearby blue fire smiled. The planar war is in its final century now. Augusta is most likely with the chief sovereign of fate. After this period of time passes, Linley will be able to make his move. Perhaps, within the next century, I'll make another breakthrough. Linley laughed loudly. Stop daydreaming. Beirut couldn't help but start to laugh. Making the final breakthrough is very difficult. However, once you do make that breakthrough, your power in terms of the profound mysteries will instantly increase tenfold. And, perhaps you will be endowed with another portion of will. Linley. Once that truly happens, you won't even have to fear the four chief sovereigns of the edicts. Grandpa Beirut, breakthroughs are difficult, but that doesn't necessarily mean I won't be able to break through in the next 100 years or so. Linley jested. In truth, the fusion of four different laws was simply too difficult. By the 999th year of the Planar War, Linley still had yet to make a breakthrough. The sky was completely dark. Whoosh! Whoosh! 7 figures shot out from the Blood Ridge continent, flying shoulder to shoulder in the air above the infernal realm. After flying for some time, the 7 figures suddenly transformed into 11 figures. But once the squad flew deep into the air above the chaotic sea, they suddenly once more expanded into a group of 17 figures. Chief Sovereign. The many figures all bowed respectfully. Everyone, the final battle to this planar war will come in 2 days. Let us go there together. The Chief Sovereign of Destruction, Wadred, covered by that black aura, swept the people with his gaze. His gaze paused momentarily on Linley. Let's go. We will head out right now. As he spoke, the Chief Sovereign of Destruction waved his hand, tearing a rift in space, then charged into it. The 16 sovereigns behind him also charged inside. Linley. This planar war will be viewed by, most likely, even more sovereigns than came to your earlier trial. Beirut sent mentally to Linley. Every single sovereign in the infernal realm, Blue Fire and Beirut included, was heading out to watch the planar war. Linley smiled calmly. The chief sovereign of fate, Orloff, won once before. The 7 sovereigns of fate all were bestowed with an additional portion of will. The vast majority of the other sovereigns are unwilling to see them grow even more powerful. Since this involved their interests, they naturally came to watch. Linley. Suddenly, the voice of the Chief Sovereign of Destruction rang out. Linley's flying speed increased slightly as he moved forward to stand next to the Chief Sovereign of Destruction's shoulders. Lord Wadred. Linley sent. The Chief Sovereign of Destruction, Wadred, swept Linley's face with his deep, dark grey gaze. A hint of a smile was on his face. You offered 6 emissaries this time. Thank you. The Chief Sovereign of Destruction just said thank you to him. Your Excellency, you once saved my life. In comparison, what is this? Linley said with a laugh. In the past, the Chief Sovereign of Light, Augusta, had threatened Linley to force him to hand over the 9 soul pearls, and was even at the verge of attacking. Fortunately, the Chief Sovereign of Destruction had appeared. The Chief Sovereign of Destruction, hearing this, smiled all the more broadly. Oh, we are about to arrive at the planar battlefield. The Chief Sovereign of Destruction looked forward. The 4 higher planes and the 7 divine planes were all located quite close to each other. In the region of chaotic space at the center of these 11 divine planes was an extremely small plane, the planar battlefield. Thus, to tear open a spatial rift and fly through chaotic space from the 11 divine planes to the planar battlefield took very little time. To go through the dimensional portals to the planar battlefield would actually take longer. Going through chaotic space was the most straightforward, shortest route. Linley. A familiar voice rang out. Linley turned to look. From afar, a group of people were drawing close to them, with the chief sovereign of death, that beautiful, red-haired maiden, at their head. This squad clearly consisted of the sovereigns of the netherworld. 14 sovereigns had come from the netherworld. Rumble. The sovereigns all directly charged into the planar battlefield. Utter silence. Within the cold, forbidding planar battlefield, a desolate wind howled. The netherworld and the infernal realm had brought a total of 31 sovereigns, and they all landed atop a mountain. Moments later, 9 other figures flew towards them from afar. These were the sovereigns of the life realm. And then, afterwards, small, scattered groups of sovereigns drew closer as well. Soon, a total of 49 sovereigns had appeared. Now, we are only missing the celestial realm and the divine light plane. The chief sovereign of death revealed a secretive smile on her face as she glanced at the chief sovereign of destruction. Wadred, Orloff seemed quite confident. Confident? Who isn't confident? Victory and defeat will only be truly determined once this battle concludes. The chief sovereign of destruction said calmly. Linley, Beirut, and Bluefire stayed together in one corner at the peak of the mountain. As many sovereigns saw it, Linley's group of 3, the 3 sovereigns of Yulon, were like one unit. Their unit, because of Linley's existence, was even more terrifying than the former unit of the 4 divine beasts. They've come. Linley said with a calm laugh. Bluefire and Beirut immediately turned to look. The other sovereigns all noticed the newcomers now as well. From far away, an imposing host was flying towards them, with a total of 22 members. The chief sovereign of fate, Orloff, was the leader. The chief sovereign of light, Augusta, was by his side. The other sovereigns belonged to the various laws and edicts. The chief sovereign of destruction, seeing this, turned his gaze towards Orloff. As for Orloff, he too was staring towards the chief sovereign of destruction. Clearly, these 2 chief sovereigns viewed each other as their most powerful foes. Linley, the 2 of them view each other as their only opponents. They look down on the other sovereigns. If one day, Linley, you were to surpass them both, what sort of a look would they have on their faces? Beirut sent to Linley with a smirk. Book 21, The Peak, Chapter 36, The Final Battle. Linley swept his gaze past the chief sovereign of destruction and the chief sovereign of fate. To surpass them, even if I perfectly merge the 4 profound mysteries of those 4 laws, I will only be on par with them. Unless, I fuse with a final fire-type lesser sovereign spark. Linley sent back. Beirut and Bluefire both nodded. The final battle is tomorrow. Let's just wait patiently. Beirut laughed. 71 sovereigns. They chatted there, casually, at the peak of the mountain. Meanwhile, the high-level commanders of the celestial realm and infernal realm began to make their preparations for the final battle. This battle could be described as the battle with the least numbers of commanders in many trillions of years. In the past, the focal point for planar wars was the various commanders hunting and killing each other prior to the final battle. But this time, virtually none of those long-famous commanders and paragons had come. The entire planar battlefield had, in total, less than 30 commanders or emissary-level experts. The vast majority of those individuals who did come were newly promoted emissaries, such as the 6 under Linley's command. There wasn't a single paragon present. Paragons had a great chance for survival, true. But if a paragon had to fight alone against a large number of foes who would focus their fire upon him, he would rather not go risk his life, unless there was some treasure in store for him. The chief sovereign of death and the rest of the 4 chief sovereigns of the edicts stood shoulder to shoulder at the top of the mountain, staring at the battlefield that was hundreds of thousands of kilometers away. Rumble. Very suddenly, at the stellar river, an endless amount of energy began to gather, which then shot out in every direction, disintegrating the military camps on each side of the stellar river in but an instant. All of the soldiers in each camp were at least at the high god level, and so everyone was able to effortlessly deflect this energy ripple. Swish! Swish! A beautiful, illusory rainbow-colored light rose towards the heavens. Each of the two corridors of the stellar river were emanating this dazzling, rainbow-colored light. Kill! The warriors, many of whom had been training or resting, didn't hesitate at all. They acted in accordance with their pre-arranged plans, and a stream of squads wildly charged towards the stellar corridors. It has begun. The 71 sovereigns who stood hundreds of thousands of kilometers away couldn't help but completely focus their attention on watching this battle. Orloff, Wadred, which side will win, do you think? The chief sovereign of death delighted in causing mischief, and so she asked them this question with a smirk. The icy-faced black-robed Wadred said calmly, "Win? Our infernal realm side doesn't need to win. We only need to fight to a draw, that is enough of a success. I'm not confident in our chances to achieve victory in both corridors, but to gain victory in a single corridor shouldn't be too hard. Victory or defeat is up to them." The chief sovereign of fate, Orloff, still had a smile on his face, looking like an amiable old man. It was as though there was nothing that could surprise him. How insane! Linley, through his divine sense, was able to see the battle go on hundreds of kilometers away, and he couldn't help but let out a sigh. Bang! Bang! All of the countless warriors who entered the stellar corridor instantly began to blaze with the aura of Sovereign's might. A 6-star fiend who used Sovereign's might be able to threaten a commander who wasn't using Sovereign's might. And now, thousands on thousands of experts were using it together? What sort of a scene was this? It had never been seen before in the past, but it would be today. Madness. Beirut, seeing this sight, couldn't help but shake his head as well. No wonder even paragons and commanders aren't willing to participate. All this is happening due to the self-interest of the sovereigns. Bluefire let out a sigh. Linley continued to carefully watch the battle proceed. The two corridors atop the stellar sea had erupted into battle at virtually the same instant. Target, straight ahead. Launch a joint attack against the black-horned man standing at the perimeter. 100 warriors, blazing with sovereign power of various colors, struck out with their weapons or with kicks in the same instant. 100 material attacks wildly blasted out towards the area in front of them, and everything within 10 meters of that muscular, black-horned man was instantly reduced to nothingness. Target, 20 meters ahead of us. Joint soul attacks. A translucent wave of soul attacks blasted forth. Many of the warriors that had been battling up ahead trembled, then fell from the skies as their divine artifacts departed their bodies. The celestial realm and the infernal realm's experts were viciously, mercilessly slaughtering each other. This was especially true since in this battle, extremely few commanders or emissaries were taking part. Thus, victory in this battle was determined through sheer slaughter. The 12 winged angels have entered the battlefield. The chief sovereign of death said with a soft laugh. The 12 winged angel army truly is formidable. Beirut sighed in amazement, and Linley, by Beirut's side, couldn't help but look over with shining eyes. At virtually the same instant, on the side of the celestial realm, 12 winged angel battle formations appeared at both of the stellar corridors. They were covered with a beautiful aura of white light, and had 12 white, fluttering wings on their backs. Straight ahead, material attacks. 6 icy-faced 12-winged angels, covered with white light, formed each angel battle formation. They unleashed rays of thick white light that instantly shot towards their foes up ahead. Wherever this light passed, space splintered and shattered. The soldiers of the infernal realm were very densely packed, and upon encountering the rays of light, tens of soldiers of the infernal realm would instantly transform into nothingness. Each squad of 12 winged angels were formed from 6 individuals. Every 10 squads formed into a platoon, while every 10 platoons formed into a company. Whoosh! Large numbers of 12 winged angels were advancing in an extremely orderly fashion. On each side, they were supported by many of the soldiers of the celestial realm. The 12 winged angels were the tip of the blade, while the many ordinary soldiers played a support role. They pressed down upon on the infernal realm's side, constantly grinding them down. Bang! Every attack of each squad of 12 winged angels would annihilate a large number of soldiers. These 12 winged angels were all, after all, no weaker than the 7 Starfiend level. Most of the warriors of the infernal realm were only at the 6 Starfiend level. There was a difference in power to begin with. Given that these 12 winged angels were also skilled in combination attacks and formations, they naturally were able to constantly advance, as easily as drilling through rotting wood. Up ahead, that angel squad in front of us. Joint material attacks. More than 700 warriors of the infernal realm jointly launched material attacks, and the skies were filled with rays of shooting light. The 12 winged angels weren't able to dodge in time, and instantly, the squad was reduced into dust. But immediately afterwards, 2 successive rays of white light shot towards the infernal realm, instantly slaughtering nearly 100 warriors and once more throwing the infernal realm's side into chaos. They are on completely different levels. Beirut shook his head with a frown. A single 12-winged angel, by himself, is comparable to 10 6-star fiends. On the side of the infernal realm, even if 100 men in a squad join forces and attack, their attacks are disordered and unable to kill the 12-winged angels who are in the angel battle formation. The only chance is for hundreds of soldiers to join forces together. Linley nodded slightly as well. He could tell that these 12-winged angels were like extremely sharp tip of a blade. They didn't fear death, and they were extremely powerful. To kill 6 12-winged angels, the infernal realm would have to lose nearly 1,000 warriors. And that was just the raw numbers. More important was the question of soldier morale. With the 12-winged angels serving as the tip of the blade, the warriors of the celestial realm felt their morale surge towards the heavens, and they brimmed with confidence. As for the soldiers of the infernal realm, although they didn't fear death, given how vast the gap in power was, quite a few soldiers felt their hearts grow cold. If they continued to die like this, how were they supposed to win? Once morale began to drop, they would easily crumble. If this continues, in a short period of time, the celestial realm side will achieve victory in both corridors. Linley said with a frown. The infernal realm side shouldn't collapse that quickly. Beirut shook his head, while Linley nodded as well. Right. The 6 emissaries under my command are currently hidden amongst the soldiers of the infernal realm. They haven't participated and unleashed their power yet. I imagine that the infernal realm side must have some sort of a plan. The 2 corridors each had nearly 612 winged angels. There were a total of 1,212 winged angels, which represented 1,207 Starfiend level experts, all of whom were fearless and able to coordinate with each other perfectly. They were simply too effective. One of the 2 stellar corridors saw the infernal realm be steadily beat back. In the other, although the infernal realm was retreating as well, they were doing so much more slowly, and the number of 12 winged angels they were killing was slightly greater as well. In the stellar corridor where the infernal realm was retreating more quickly. Swoosh! Swoosh! One ray of white light after another. These were the combined attacks of the 12 winged angels, and many of the soldiers of the infernal realm died miserable deaths to them. Although occasionally, they would be able to launch an effective combination attack of their own and kill 6 of those 12 winged angels, the losses of the infernal realm were simply too great, and too many of them had died. White light flashed everywhere. It was a slaughter. Countless soldiers of the infernal realm were reduced into dust by that light. Kill! The soldiers of the celestial realm bellowed with glee as they chased and killed. The infernal realm constantly retreated, until finally, they broke down into a complete rout. Under that sort of wild, pressing assault, they had completely collapsed. And with their collapse, the battle's outcome was no longer in any doubt. Soon, the celestial realm side reached the other side of the stellar corridor, and the rainbow-colored light disappeared. The celestial realm had gained victory in one of the corridors. From afar, the many sovereigns continued to watch. "Wadred, you've lost in one of the corridors." The chief sovereign of death chortled merrily. "There's one more left," Wadred said calmly. "Oh, so the experts really were all focused on this corridor." The chief sovereign of fate, Orloff, chortled. Linley and the others had discovered as well that in the other corridor, the Infernal Realm side was launching wild attacks now. Indeed, the Infernal Realm side was able to scrounge up quite a few 7-star fiend level experts. 100 of them are in each company, and there are 3 in total, Linley said with a laugh. The Infernal Realm and the other divine planes still had quite a few 7-star fiends present, and many of them were under some sort of domination or control, such as how Purgatory Commander Mosi was able to control quite a few 7-star fiends. Those 7-star fiends were under sole domination. Naturally, they were incomparably loyal and fearless. And so, the Infernal Realm, Netherworld, and other divine planes were able to come up with 3 companies of 7-star fiends. However, although in terms of individual power they were equivalent to the angels, the 7-star fiends of the Infernal Realm were unable to form a marvelous battle formation. A wild counterattack. Beirut began to laugh. Under the command of these companies of 7-star fiends, the Infernal Realm soldiers have begun to rise in morale. Both the Infernal Realm and the Celestial Realm had gone berserk. Attacks filled the heavens and wildly struck out towards their foes. Many 7-star fiends and even many 12-winged angels began to fall. 6 12-winged angels formed each battle formation, and they were unable to resist the combined attacks of so many 7-star fiends. But naturally, many 7-star fiends of the Infernal Realm died as well. Slash. Swish. The strange thing was, one 12-winged angel after another began to fall as multiple figures stealthily, agilely moved about through the massed soldiers. They were extremely agile, and all of them were astonishingly, terrifyingly strong. The chief sovereign of fate, Orloff, frowned slightly, and then he turned to look at the chief sovereign of destruction. "Oh? Commander-level experts? I don't have that many, just those," the chief sovereign of destruction said calmly. Those emissaries who had chosen to come here were mostly very close to the commander level to begin with. Given that they now possessed sovereign artifacts, it wasn't too hard for one of them to ambush and kill a 12-winged angel. Because in this battle, the various planes had joined forces to defeat Orloff, the many emissaries present were virtually all on the side of the Infernal Realm. The Celestial Realm had very few. What's more, every single emissary was roughly as effective as 6 of the 12-winged angels. "Linley, it seems the Infernal Realm doesn't have much of an advantage," Beirut said with a frown. "Those 12-winged angels are completely fearless. If a few die, the others immediately reform into a new battle formation. Any 6 of the 12-winged angels are able to form into the angel battle formation." Linley saw this as well. The 12-winged angels were too berserk, they would rather die than retreat. This made it so that even though the Infernal Realm had sent out 3 companies of 7-star fiends, and even though quite a few emissaries were launching sneak attacks, there was no way for them to force the Celestial Realm into a retreat. What are the 6 of them planning? Why haven't they acted yet? Linley stared forward, puzzled.